Okay. And then yeah. No. Okay, turn that one off again. Back to work. And now it's not picking up. So because I muted that, so I'll leave that on mute for now. And then when we need the audio from Zoom, I'll unmute it, okay?
You'll end.
So right now this is muted. So right now it's not picking up the noise.
But you will be recorded, and I'll be
Yeah, right
recorded.
now it's recording on here. You can see that it's
This is
picking up.
moving, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, the next thing with this is the comment is not related something else.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw it. Seeing that too. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's fun. Are you enjoying? Yeah. I see you take this as a song.
I was so here for let's see if I can solve out of the work really. Getting the lecture ready to
It's very nice. I think it's very young, but I'm still using it. Yeah. Yes, that is. That's still good. Go out and have a look. But it's really good. They already gave stuff on that, so I think you know. So I think to start them again on the stuff. So yeah, I think you put the press on, so we should find. Yeah, should we start?
Yeah, we can start now.
Should I? I think we got some delay.
I think people will still be coming. People will still come whilst we're talking. That's fine.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. Because otherwise, I mean, it's been people
Yeah.
will still be coming all the time.
Yeah.
Do you have did you have the book or the PDF? Do you wanted the page number for that book? I can send you. I
Oh,
have
that's only got. This way, I would know exactly what section.
I think that's all.
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you all to Imperial College and to STEM Muslims and Muslim Research Network. This is our second Muslims and AI/Tech event at this time of the year. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to who STEM Muslims are, and then I'll pass it over to Booneen, inshallah. So STEM Muslims, we're a student-led society at Imperial College, and our goal is to uplift the Ummah and to unite Muslim minds. So we do this through three main ways. We have outreach, education, and careers. Outreach focusing on prospective students and children, getting them into these STEM degrees at high level universities. We have careers that focuses on taking students from here or students from other universities into good jobs. And then education, which this event is part of. We support students here, and also we focus on academics. Now, we're also at the moment we're sponsoring or we're running a sponsorship for a charity called One Ummah, and their goal, they sort of focus on education. So that's in countries and places such as Gaza, in Sudan, in Malawi, lots of these less well-off places. Now I'm going to play a short video about who One Ummah are.
When crisis strikes, when hunger spreads, when the world turns away, We don't wait for headlines. We move across war zones, disasters, and forgotten lands. Places the world might forget, but the Ummah never does. Our beginning wasn't built on fame, it was built on a promise to deliver your trust where it's needed most. In the last year alone, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your support, we've reached over 1.8 million people in need. 551,000 fed through emergency food aid, 74,000 given clean and safe water, 66,000 protected from the winter cold, 4,200 orphans supported with food, care and education, 56 masajid built across the developing world, and over 123,000 people fed through our Qurbani program. Between 2023 and 2024, we responded to 7 major global emergencies, including the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, the floods in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and the ongoing genocide in Gaza, where we supported over 255,000 people with food, medicine, shelter, and hope. But our mission doesn't stop at survival. It's about restoring dignity. It's about sustainability through education, clean water systems, and long-term housing. We give families the tools to rebuild and rise again. Adhering to the Quran and the Sunnah, we follow every penny, from your pocket to the palms that need it. Upholding our 100% donation policy, and it may feel small from here, but on the other side, it's everything. It's a shield between a starving family in despair. It's a seed planted for your akhirah. And whatever you spend of good, it will be fully repaid to you, and you will not be wronged. Your donations to one ummah enables us to help another mother, father, orphan, or community, to continue the legacy of what we started many years ago, from a few brothers with good intentions to now aiding millions worldwide. One day, it will be your name that's called, your book that's opened, your deeds that speak. And in that moment, what will you wish you gave? Your time, your money, your care. The scale will speak. Let it speak for you.
Yep. So one number, their whole or their main focus is on education, because education is the route through which people escape poverty and these sorts of things. So in country like even in Gaza, the children there, they're having to learn in tents. All of the universities, the schools are all destroyed. Yemen, children don't have access. All of these countries and many more. Now we have a QR code to donate. If you'd like to donate, please scan here, and we'll have the QR code open later on during the source session as well, inshallah. I'll leave this open for a few seconds. Okay, and with that, I'll pass it over to Boumediene now, inshallah.
So how to swap? So now how do I swap this guy?
So right now it's picking up the speaking onto the mic there. So if you just speak into this, then it'll play on the speakers or project your voice.
No, I meant how do I get my slide?
Oh, how do you get your slides? Go on to press share to share your screen. Then press for place. And then which one is it?
What's lost? Yeah.
Yep.
But it's
Go-
not here. Yeah.
Go double. Oh yeah, on the screen.
So is this like being recorded or?
Let me check on that. Is it presenting a screen in Zoom? You just do entire screen and then just show that and it should be okay.
Yeah.
Yep, so press share now. Yep, and now go on to full screen on that. Yeah, and now it's recording that. Yep. If you press the green arrow there, it should move out of the way. That green arrow there.
This one.
No, that one. That one there should minimize it. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
But that one.
This one. Yeah. Okay, is that good?
Yeah, as long as it's recording.
Yeah. And then just speak into this and it'll record your voice a little bit better.
Should I use as?
Yeah, just use that as a microphone.
Okay. اوكي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق الخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم على آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم نسألك فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين المقربين اللهم اجعل لساني عامرا بذكرك وقلبي بخشيتك إنك على ما تشاء قدير أنت حسبنا ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. So my name is Boumediene. And so today I'll try to talk about interface of Islamic philosophy, Islamic ethics, and AI. So this will be related to two papers. One was published in philosophy and technology. Another one is under review, but it will be also a book project, inshallah, with the Goethe. And then there's another one, like a recently published philosophical novel, like just which on the topic. And so the outline of the talk, I don't think I will have time to talk about everything. So yeah, it would consist of three parts. First one is about the what do we mean by the interface of AI, machine learning, and philosophy, and why is this important from Islamic perspective, and how this like dealing with AI is directly related to simple questions of evolution of worldviews, of what is real, how do we know ourselves, and what does it mean to be a human being, and how these questions are being redefined by the use of AI and the underlying metaphysical framework that comes with AI. So this is something that is not new even in Western philosophy, where I'll talk about Heidegger's concept of inframing as a philosophical concepts to understand modern technology, including AI and machine learning. So the concept of inframing is just telling that modern technology is about displacing the worldliness of the world into a man-made world. So in the sense that we will not be experiencing the world as such, but via modern technology. Then we have the other question of philosophy for AI and machine learning, and the problem of carrying machine learning into philosophy, and then this is where Islamic philosophy will play a role. So here basically we have the interface of AI and philosophy. One is about carrying AI to philosophy, and the other one is about carrying philosophy to AI. And then in Islamic philosophy, we have the concept of the two worlds, the world of command and the world of creation, like coming directly from the Quran. Verily, his is the word of command and the word of creation. And then how AI is dealing only with one side of the reality, but not dealing with the other one. And so this is also related to the two categories of the intellect, the original intellect and the analogic intellect. The original intellect is the intellect that witnesses reality through basira, through insight. And the analogic intellect is the one that uses previous analogies to function in the world. And this is also related to the two categories of knowledge, which are the intellectual knowledge and the transmitted knowledge. So intellectual knowledge is directly related to the ayah, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, that is how we experience divine realities directly through the soul. And the transmitted knowledge is the knowledge that we get transmitted to us via scholars, and also related to the two eyes of the heart, which are the faculty of imagination and the faculty of reason. So faculty of reason is the one that is directly related to logic, and the faculty of imagination is directly related to the soul. And then from there we would go to part 3, which is related to Islamic ethics. So here we'll be dealing with Islamic ethics from the perspective of the philosophy of Taha Abdul Rahman, who introduced this philosophy of covenants. And he introduced covenants as a way of dealing with, as a framework to introduce a new philosophical framework, especially related to ethics. And what we did is that we applied these covenants to AI, and then how it should we should deal with it as human beings in general. So the question, so the premise is relatively original in the sense that I would like to start with the hadith of Prophet ﷺ that we heard probably many times by scholars when they are talking about what's happening in Gaza and the genocide that is happening there. And then, so when Prophet ﷺ said, يوشك الأمم تداعى عليكم كما تداعى الأكلة إلى قصعتها فقال قائل ومن قلة نحن يومئذ يا رسول الله قال بل أنتم يومئذ كثير ولكنكم غثاء كغثاء السيل ولينزعن الله من صدور عدوكم المهابة منكم وليقذفن الله في قلوبكم الوهن فقال قائل يا رسول الله وما الوهن قال حب الدنيا وكراهية الموت. So I'll let you read the translation, but bottom line is that so everybody has been wondering why are we so weak, and then why weren't to be able to do anything, especially when it came to the question of the genocide in Palestine. And yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ already answered this 1400 years ago, and then he said that our main issue is wahan, and wahan is a spiritual disease that is related to the love for the dunya and hatred for death. And then here, I wanted to just argue and push the argument a little bit further, and the question whether is AI an embodiment of wahan, in the sense it's like the embodiment of that spiritual disease, especially coming from the people who are behind AI. So was it developed by people affected by wahan? And then what is the impact of a wahan-based product on our souls? So dunya in the sense that it's like lower level of reality, and then here we would like to argue that AI is dealing with data, and data is the lowest level of reality, which is a measurement and quantification. And this is what Guénon, for example, had talked about in his book, The Reign of Quantity, about 100 years ago, where he talked about spiritual diseases being directly related to the reign of quantity, and then the weakness of quality. But quantity and quality in the philosophical term. And then the question would be also, what is the impact of a wahan-based product on our souls? So, okay, so what is AI? I mean, AI is a broad scientific discipline with its roots in philosophy, mathematics, and computer science. So basically, AI is just mathematics plus coding. That aims to understand and develop systems that display properties of intelligence. Then from there, we got two schools of AI, essentially, symbolic AI and cognitive AI. Symbolic AI, its paradigm is that intelligence itself and aims at problem solving as such. So it is based on the premise that computers are systems for manipulating the mind's symbolic representation of the world and solving problems. And cognitive AI, so its paradigm is learning and is based on simulating neurons. So one is about problem solving, and the other one is about modeling neurons and studying how the brain discriminates patterns and how it responds appropriately. And learning from the cognitive AI perspective happens when the connections between neurons get stronger. And so in a way, we got like two schools of AI. One is about axiomatizing the behavior of the brain and then design a physical system, which is symbolic AI, versus axiomatizing the physical brain and then investigating the system analytically to determine its behavior and probably solving problems from this cognitive perspective. Machine learning is a subdiscipline of cognitive AI, where computer programs learn associations of predictive power from examples and data, but here the argument is that AI and machine learning are not like any other instrument, since they aim at mimicking human faculties like learning and intelligence. And the philosophical position adopted while developing these technologies is not philosophically natural. So it is most likely atheistic or agnostic, but definitely not God-centered. And there is a subtle philosophical shift towards Western thought. And among its objectives is transhumanism, transforming human beings into products, where it's the other way, like the main premise is that data define what is real, and what is not measurable becomes not real. And so here is that we're dealing continuously with machine learning and AI models that are not philosophically neutral will impact the mind. And so meaning that this will impact the aqidah, because aqidah is directly related to the mind, which will change the aqidah and worldview and hence the soul, because there is direct connection between aqidah and that is how we perceive the world versus how our soul perceives the world. So there's a clash between how we perceive the world via the soul versus what we believe the world being is, then there will be a clash, and therefore there will be a spiritual crisis. So in Islamic philosophy, the intellect, aql, is a living awareness of the way things actually are. It has two eyes, the analogic intellect and the original intellect. Machine learning and AI models are feeding the analogic intellect with wrong information about the world, because it's telling that it's only what is measurable is real. That is, data defines what is real. So sometimes we talk about data-centric worldview from people who are developing AI. But since there is this imbalance between the analogic intellect and the original intellect, so it is important for practicing Muslim dealing with AI to make dhikr in order to strengthen the soul, because the analogic intellect is being weakened by this message that what is real, what is measurable is real, that data is real, and then what is not measurable is not real. So, in a way, we have a clear argument in the Quran that in particular Surah Fussilat, سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق, so that we will show them our signs within themselves and in the horizon to prove to them that He is the real. So even though we cannot measure Allah, there is no way to measure empirically Allah, but Allah is telling us that even He is unseen, He's not perceived by the five senses, and there is no instrument. You cannot design an experiment from physical perspective to prove that Allah exists, but He's telling us that He is the real through the signs. And so, and we know that this is true because Allah taught the names, taught Adam all the names, meaning that we already have this innate knowledge in our souls, and this is the goal of the original intellect. So while AI is definitely shutting down the faculty of imagination by emphasizing the message that that only what is quantitative is real. So we experience the world with our souls, but the mind superimposes its limitations from the philosophical framework it is adopting on reality, and makes reality appear in a way that is consistent with those limitations. And then this leads to a spiritual crisis, as I mentioned. So here, I mean, as I said, the talk is in principle dealing with these different aspects. So we have the interface of Islamic philosophy as in the schools of Ibn Arabi, Ghonaguian, Abdul Wahid Yahya, and Abdul Rahman Taha. And then from there, we are going to look at metaphysics and ethics. And then here I want to deal with, answer questions about AI. And then I wanted to talk about Heidegger's existential phenomenology as a Western perspective on the same questions, to show that there is consistency between the conclusions, that what we are finding as conclusions from an Islamic philosophical perspective, we can also reach them from Heidegger's phenomenology, and that therefore, I mean, in a way, strengthening the argument, because we are reaching the same conclusion from two different perspectives. One is God-centered, which is Islamic philosophy, and the other one is Heidegger's. I mean, Heidegger's phenomenology and ontology are atheistic. I'm not saying that Heidegger is an atheist, but I'm saying that his ontology is atheistic, and then even with that, we reach the same conclusion. So ontologically speaking, there is like an orthogonality between the two philosophical systems, but still reaching the same conclusions about AI. So I don't said how much time do I have? 10 minutes left, or I don't know who's keeping track of time. Actually, yeah. So let's assume I have 10 minutes here. So so first, as I said, we are looking at the interface of philosophy and AI. So one is philosophy for AI, and the other one is AI for philosophy. So problem one, philosophy for AI and carrying AI into philosophy. So as I said, we want to carry AI into philosophy and see what this issue is doing. So it means that Muslim machine learning researchers must adopt philosophical position while developing machine learning. And then we want to be clear, and in a way, what AI is pushing us as Muslim is to be able to get the answers to very basic questions that are being pushed by AI, but we need to check as Muslim whether the answers that are provided by AI from philosophical perspective are compatible with the Islamic framework. So what is real? What does it mean to be in the world? How do we know what we know? These are like epistemological questions. The first one are ontological, and the second one are epistemological. And yeah, so here as I said, I'll try to talk about inframing, Heidegger's inframing, and then how the Heideggerian philosophy showed and in a way ended the project of symbolic AI in the 70s. And then here I would like to argue that Islamic philosophy can play a role in limiting and then defining the domain of applicability of modern machine learning and AI, so that we don't get just follow the hype and then lose ourselves on the way. Yeah, so here, I mean, quickly, I mean, we could see that there is an evolution of worldviews. If you look at the last 1,000 years, when we moved from God-centered worldview, where we know as Muslims that the full circle, I mean, if we know that the main premise in Islam is that inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, we start from Allah, and then we come back to Allah. So we start from the day of Mithaq, alastu bi rabbikum, amanat your Lord, which is the first stage. And then we come back, we come to earth. So first that the soul joins the body in the womb of our mothers, then we come to the dunya, and then we come to the barzakh, and then we come to qiyamah, which got like a full circle happening from the pre-eternity to Yawm al-Qiyamah. So basically, the center is inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The center is Allah. And then suddenly, like the Cartesian distinction, which is the separation between object and subject, which is I think, therefore I am. So what happens is that the shift moved from he is, therefore he, so he is in a way that inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, to an I-centered worldview, from I to I. Instead from Allah to Allah, it became from I to I. I mean, like Sayyid Nasi said, there is like a fundamental fault here in the statement, I think, therefore I am, which that mean is either I think, therefore he is, or I think, therefore he is. So in the sense that everything should lead to Allah, not like circling around ourselves. But then now there's like an even further shift in this definition of what it means to be real. So the human-centered worldview is humans define what is real, and then we saw there is an issue there because in that sense it led to dehumanization. I mean, you could see that what happened in Palestine wouldn't have happened if people really viewed the victims of the genocide to be real human beings. So there was a dehumanization at that level where people were not being viewed as human beings. So in that sense, philosophers, Western philosophers, are viewed as prophets, and then they define what it means to be a human being. And a good example that I always give is the case of Jürgen Habermas, who is like a modern humanist. But then when it came to the question of Gaza about 2 years ago, he just like stopped discussing about it. I mean, concluding in a way, I mean, implying that Palestinians are not human beings. And so the other shift is the data-centered worldview, where here it's big tech companies that define the perfect human being as a human being who is that's like rational and totally objective and consistent with the data. So in that sense, if big tech view you as dysfunctional, then in a way you also get dehumanized. And you can see it plainly in one of the statements of Yuval Harari, who said that religion is no more than arbitrary beliefs and behaviors. Humanism is a reliance on subjective experiences, like desires and experiences, but AI knows you more than you know yourself. What AI cannot tell you is not real. In a way, data defines what is real and what is to be defined as objective. So I don't think I will have time to talk about this. But here, I mean, this is like an example of how technology affects us, like an example of Nietzsche's thought process being affected by the typewriter. I mean, at some point he had a problem with his eyes. I mean, he used to use a fountain pen, but then because of the problem with his eyes, I mean, he started using a typewriter, and suddenly he realized that his entire writing and philosophical system started being discretized because of the way the typewriter is functioning. So it affected his philosophical system. And Nietzsche, this is what he replied to one of the journalists at that time, saying that our writing equipment takes part in the forming of our thoughts, and that his philosophy in a way changed from arguments to aphorism, from thoughts to prompts, from rhetoric to telegram style. And this is exactly what is meant by the sentence, our writing tools are also working on our thoughts. And that's exactly what happened in an experiment that was done, I think, a year and a half ago at Cornell University, where we had where their thoughts were affected by GPT. So 1,500 participants were invited to write a paragraph answering the question, is social media good for society? And then people who used different systems, one was biased, had a bias in one direction versus the other. And suddenly, I mean, the participants themselves got affected, and then they started replying according to the implicit bias in the system. So that's Heidegger's framing, where he was saying that, as I said, the displacing the worldliness of the world into a man-made world, and where technology leads to understanding the world in terms of its usefulness and calculability, and then it's reducing the world to a mere object and reducing human existence to a calculative instrumental relationship with the world. So that's, I don't think I will have time to talk about this. Yeah, so here, as I said, you can find them in my paper, but where this calculating point of view is coming from all the way from Hobbes, where reasoning is calculating with mind. Descartes had the same principle. Leibniz introduced this concept of universal characteristic. Kant concepts as rule. Frege it's possible to formalize these rules. So that's then this is what Heidegger did. And then, as I mentioned, like from our perspective, Islamic perspective, we got two kinds of intellect. We don't have only the analytical intellect, so we have to have a balance between the two different intellects, and then having it's like a two eyes model that Ibn Arabi talked about. That we have two original intellect and analogical intellect, which leads to reason and imagination. And then the dominance of either distorts perception and awareness. And this is coming directly from the ayah, Ala lahu al-khalq wal-amr, so which is like 754. He is all creation and commandment. So this led to many Muslim philosophers to deduce that the world is divided into two categories, which is the world of creation and the world of command. And so I'm just going to go quickly to part 3. So yeah, then here, how do we deal? I mean, practically, here I was dealing with metaphysics and ontology, and I want to be practical in the sense I want to deal with ethics. Then ethics answers questions, basic question of what is right, what is wrong. And then, so we don't have to buy the ethical frameworks developed by Westerners and seculars in general. I mean, secularism is not only in the West, I mean, it's also present in many Muslim countries. So here I liked the philosophical framework of Taha Abdul Rahman, where he talks about the Itimani framework, which is the philosophy of trusteeship. And then his framework offers a spiritually grounded framework for AI, which is like what I would like to argue for. So he said that there's a concept of amana, which and he did use like many covenants, about 6 in general, but we sum them up into 3 from a Western perspective. Yeah, worth noting is that Taha Abdul Rahman refuses to write in non-Arabic because he believes that Islamic philosophy has to be dealt with in the Arabic language. But if we reduce it to the Western framework, we end up having 3 covenants. So the first one is the ontological covenant. Second one is epistemological covenant, and the third one is the existential covenant. The ontological covenant affirms divine sovereignty and human accountability. I remember the principle, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So we have a responsibility vis-a-vis Allah Azza wa Jal. He created us, and then for that reason, we have to be practicing because deen in a way is directly related to dain, which is debt, and that's what leads to accountability. The epistemological covenant is directly related to ethical acquisition and use of knowledge. So which means that knowledge is not ours. I mean, this is why we have to ask Allah, Rabbi zidni ilma, or Allah increase me in knowledge. So knowledge is coming from Allah Azza wa Jal. But we have to use knowledge in a way that is ethical. So you cannot use AI to commit genocide, for example. And the third one is the existential covenant, which calls for stewardship, because we have khilafah. And therefore, as human beings, we have to to maintain justice, sustainability, and compassion in AI's impact on society and the environment. And then in the paper, you could look, I mean, we looked at discussing application of these three covenants to AI and then to AI sectors. And then we suggested that a spiritually rooted ethical model like the Itimani framework recenters values beyond secular or procedural AI ethics. So this is what we did in our paper. So that we discuss also the limiting existing models for ethics. I mean, starting with Maqasid Sharia. I mean, this is like very common now. And then we got like an expert in Maqasid was talking here. So hopefully he will join us in the panel and talk about his perspective on Maqasid for AI. And then we also had a critique for Floridi's informating ethics because it was a secular and system-centric. And it had, I mean, his metaphysical implications were inconsistent with Islamic metaphysics. And so for Ata Abdurrahman, ethics is equal to ontology plus intentionality plus accountability. So it critiques consequentialism and instrumental rationality. And then he suggested to replace rule-based ethics with spiritual responsibility. Then we just also argued, I mean, we showed where this is coming directly from the Quran. And then we suggested the following framework in a way that if you have an AI use case, then you have to project it in this three-dimensional model, which is the three covenants, the ontological, epistemological, and existential. So you have to be consistent with the three covenants in order to be able to say that we are using AI in an ethical way. And key takeaways for this part is that the Itimani ethics offers spiritually grounded alternatives to secular AI, so centers intention, trust, and metaphysical responsibility, and is better suited to guide AI development in a Muslim and global context instead of buying into the secular ethical frameworks in Muslim context. And so this is the quote of Taha Abdurrahman, that true dignity is only attained through sincere ubudiyya, servitude. It rescues humans from enslavements to desire or to the machine. So here, you also had this concept of aql al-ali versus aql al-ali. So one is the mechanistic intellect, which reminds us of the quantitative intellect, the analytic intellect, versus the aql al-ali, which reminds us of the analytic intellect. So he also pushed these two concepts in his philosophy. To conclude, so machine learning and AI are not philosophically neutral. Heidegger's concept of framing is a complex and profound philosophical idea that can provide a critical lens through which to understand modern technology, including AI. And modern technology views the world as standing reserve, essentially as a resource to be used in a way is distancing human beings from the world instead of being viewed as being in the world. And so this is in a way the critique of AI, because it's coming from these different perspectives, that reductionism, utilitarianism, and loss of essence, and in a way it can be viewed as a challenge to humanity if we don't deal with it properly from an ethical perspective. Lastly, I'd like to advertise for a book, which is like a philosophical novel that deals with between the interface of Islamic metaphysics and AI. And so that's the biography. And thank you. So I don't think I will have time for questions. So I can just go to the next speaker. I don't know where he is. Hi. Yeah, can we use it from here? Yeah. Just refresh it. So I'm recording as well from Zoom. Yeah. Unless you want to join my Zoom, and then that's it. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا الكتاب والحكمة جزا الله عنا نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم بما هو أهله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم طهر قلبي من النفاق وعملي من الرياء ولساني من الكذب وعيني من الخيانة فإنك تعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi everyone. My name is Uwais, and today I'm going to be running through a presentation on the concept of aql in Islamic philosophy from sacred reason to philosophical inquiry. So my name is Uwais. I've got a background in theoretical physics, so I spent 4 years in the Blackgate lab down the road. I've got a background in Islamic studies and philosophy. And I teach Islamic theology and philosophy at Darul Qasim College, and also as part of the Alamiya programs at Lantern of Knowledge and Hafs. And during the day, I run an AI company called Simplexico, where we do AI consulting in the legal sector, specifically for large law firms. So today, inshallah, what I wanted to do is try and give a different perspective to the conversation around intelligence. When we're usually discussing intelligence or intellect, it's always in the context of AI or artificial intelligence. So I wanted for us to take a moment and step back and see if we take a holistically Islamic view, just solely, purely on the idea of intelligence, what that looks like, how we can understand it, and how we can make sense of things, inshallah. So it's a bit of a different presentation. So when the scholars, they speak about aql, or they speak about the intelligence or intelligence, they break it down into two parts. They say there is what is known as the innate ability. And this is your ability to think and understand and reason and common sense. Every single human has this. And this is essentially the basic hardware Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows to humans. It's the capacity to think and for us to be functional as humans. And then layered upon that is our ability to acquire knowledge, acquire understanding, further refine our intellect. And this is the actual understanding and sound judgment gained by using your intellect and sharpening it and making it more refined. So you can think of this as the software or the content which is installed on top of the hardware. So it's the knowledge, wisdom, and good decisions that come from using your mind properly, from exercising your thinking, and actually practicing and refining your intellect. If you leave it alone, it will become rusty. If you're using it effectively and efficiently on a daily basis, then it becomes refined and stronger.
Sharing the screen right now. Can you give me a minute to set up?
What's wrong?
It's not sharing the screen right now.
It's not sharing. Yeah, okay, good.
Sorry.
Yeah, is that working?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll just put it back into.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
It's different. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so as with everything, the best place to start in terms of understanding a concept or an idea from an Islamic point of view is to go back to the Quran and see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself discusses that topic or idea, so we can build an understanding of how to think about it. So if we look at a couple of verses in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the intellect, we realize a few things. So one verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. In Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he addresses the people and he questions, you order people to be righteous, yet you forget yourselves while you recite the book, meaning the scripture. Will you not then use your reason? Meaning, are you not being misaligned with your actions and your beliefs? وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. And these are the parables we present to the people, but none understand them except those who have knowledge, right? So none can reflect and actually appreciate these examples apart from those who have knowledge about these things. And in a longer verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he speaks about the creation. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ وما أنزل الله من السماء من ماء فأحيا به الأرض بعد موتها وبث فيها من كل دابة وتصريف الرياح والسحاب المسخر بين السماء والأرض لآيات لقوم يعقلون. Right? So indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, the alternation of the night and the day, the ships that sail the sea for the benefit of the people, the water Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down from the sky, giving life to the earth after its death, the creatures he has spread throughout it, the shifting of the winds and the clouds, control between the heaven and the earth. Surely in all of these things are signs for people who use their intellect. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's describing his complexity that he's created in creation and all of these different things. But then at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he enforces his point that only people of intellect, of understanding can actually appreciate this. So what can we take from this? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises people for using their minds or saying things like this, that none understand these examples except those who have knowledge and understanding, it's talking about the second meaning of the intellect, meaning the acquired intellect, how it's utilized and how it's applied. So this is speaking to people actively thinking, learning, reflecting, making wise choices, and essentially using the intellect to align themselves with reality and align themselves with truth. And on the flip side, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticizes the disbelievers for not using the intellect, it's a sign that they have minds, they have intellect, they have acquired knowledge, but they refuse to engage their intellect because it will have negative consequences for them and their biases, but they refuse it and they reject reflecting on the truth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticizes these people for having intellect, but not exercising it in the right way. And when we look at the Sharia, when we look at the divine law, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He excuses somebody from moral responsibility because of no intellect. For example, a young child or someone who's severely mentally incapable, they have no responsibility under the Sharia, they have no obligation under the Sharia, meaning they won't be held accountable. So when it's in this meaning, it's understood in the first innate understanding of the intellect. They don't have the basic capacity to allow them to be accountable. So they don't have the basic accountability required for them to be held responsible. So when we look at the idea of the aql in Quran, we see it's very closely aligned with recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recognizing truth. And when people are praised for the use of the intellect, they're praised for using their intellect to align themselves with the truth. And when people are criticized, they're criticized for not using their intellect to align themselves with the truth by rejecting it. When we look at hadith, we find something similar. We find a few narrations which mention the intellect. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله تعالى لما خلق العقل قال له أقبل فأقبل ثم قال له أدبر فأدبر فقال وبعزتي وجلالي ما خلقت خلقا أشرف منك وبك آخذ وبك أعطي. So Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, he narrated that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the intellect, He addressed it and He said to it specifically, come forward, and the intellect complied, it came forward. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to it, go back, and the intellect went back. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He praised the intellect and He said that I did not create anything more noble than you in my creation. And through you, I take, and through you, I bestow, right? So it's interesting because here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's praising the intellect for its ability to comply with the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the intellect to come forward, the intellect came forward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the intellect to go back and the intellect went back. And the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising the intellect as being the most noble creation, it's due to this reason that the intellect is what allows us to comply with the divine address and with the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in another narration, عن عمر رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما اكتسب رجل مثل فضل عقل يهدي صاحبه إلى هدى ويردي عن ردى وما تم إيمان عبد ولا استقام دينه حتى يكمل عقله. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he narrates from Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said that no man acquires anything comparable to the virtue of intellect. So it's one of the most highest and noble things a person can seek to do is to acquire knowledge or acquire intellect or increase their intellect. It guides its possessor to guidance and turns him away from destruction. And the faith of a servant is not complete, nor is his religion stable and upright until his intellect is complete, until his understanding is complete, until his knowledge is perfected. So again, from when we look at hadith, the aql is understood in this context of being a tool which allows us to comply with the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also a faculty which enables us to be guided and enables us to find truth through the deen. So when we look at the etymology of the term in the Arabic language, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use these particular words to describe this particular context? We find this particular context or meaning, concept, we find something interesting. So the etymology of the term, aql, comes from the root letters ayn, qaf, and lam. And the way the Arabic language works is that it's a Semitic language. So every word is derived from a triliteral root. And the meaning between the root and any derived word is shared in an abstract sense, okay? And this is this is the nature of the Arabic language. Any word you find in the Arabic language, you can trace it back to its root, and there is some abstract connection between the root and then the derived word. So how does this work for the aql? So the literal meaning of the root of ayn, qaf, and lam, it means to tie, to hold, or to restrain down. So for example, you can tie a camel's leg so it doesn't run away. A medicine, it can be used to bind the stomach. A person ties their hair, or somebody holds back their tongue from speaking. So this is aql used in a literal sense. It's used to tie something, hold something down, restrain something. So from this sense of tying and restraining, this abstract meaning, lots of derived words come from the same root, right? So you have this notion, this word of ma'aqil. So a ma'aqil or a ma'qal is a fortress or a stronghold. It shares that root because it's a place that protects people. So aql, it's used to mean blood money. This is the payment given to the family of somebody killed in a conflict. Historically, they would bring camels and tie them at the victim's family's camp as payment. So they would pay them in terms of camels. So the act of tying the camels, the restraining of the camels and tying them down, became associated with the word aql, and then it came to mean the blood money itself, and then the relatives who pay it are called al-uqala, al-aqila. And iqal is specifically the rope which is used to tie the camel's leg. And aqila, it's a precious woman, pearl, or treasured possession, something guarded, protected, or taken care for because it's tied down and it's protected. And again, ma'aqil is also used for a mountain or fortress where people seek protection. So you can see that all of the derived words from this same root share in this notion of this abstract meaning of restraint, of protection, of binding, of holding. So the core picture behind intelligence or aql, as we want to understand it, is this meaning of restraining and holding back. So your intellect is effectively what ties you back, or what restrains you and what holds you from acting on blind impulse, and it restrains you from harmful action, and it holds you to what's right. It holds you to compliance against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look into Islamic theology, we find some interesting discussions around the nature of intellect and the nature of intelligence, which is remarkable. Okay, so in the context of Islamic theology, intellect and aql is understood as the pivot of moral responsibility. Okay, for anyone to be mukallaf, anyone to have taklif or to have this moral responsibility to follow the divine command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a prerequisite of that is the intellect. So the intellect grounds moral and legal responsibility, and it effectively allows one to determine right from wrong, and it allows us to determine truth from falsehood. So it has a moral function in helping us understand morality about the world, and it has an epistemic function, allowing us to discern truth from falsehood and be discerning what is true and what is not true, what is reality, what is not reality. Practically, children become morally accountable under Sharia when they mature. Why is that the case? What transition takes place that allows them now to be held accountable to the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What takes place is when children mature, when they become baligh, is that the development of their basic intellect, their innate intellect completes. As a biological process, it completes. And now, because their intellect is sufficient, they are now mukallaf, they are now morally responsible, and then they are now culpable and responsible under the eyes of the Sharia. And intellect is what creates eligibility for the divine address and what makes people accountable. So it allows us to receive the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the address that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in the Quran and in the Sunnah, so that we can understand the obligations, the prohibitions, and then we can use the intellect as a capacity and a capability for allow us to comply with the divine commandments. So when we look in Islamic theology, we find fascinating discussions amongst the scholars who've actually had different theories and ideas around the intellect and intelligence itself. Okay, so according to one group, the Mu'tazila, they're considered a deviant school in theology, that they had this idea and this notion and this position that humans are all equivalent in their intellectual capacity. One human does not differ from the next in their intellectual ability or their intellectual capacity. It's stable across all of humanity. Right? According to other schools in theology, they had a notion and understanding that intellect varies between people based on nurture and nature. This is what we commonly understand. Different people have different intellectual capabilities. Different people have different abilities to reason and understand and reflect. And Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, the great scholar, he had this very interesting position that's unique to him amongst the scholars in theology, is he argued that every human has sufficient intellect to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the creator. They cannot be excused. So from his position, he's arguing that basic humanity, every single human being who exists in humanity has sufficient intellect to go through the reasoning process to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the creator. And as a result of that intellectual ability that every single human possesses, so far as they're sane and they're mature, it means that they cannot be excused from recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a creator. So there's obviously a lot more depth and nuance and color to these discussions, but I just wanted to pick out a couple of positions so you can see the flavor of the debates and the discussions. Even within our own tradition of Islamic theology and philosophy, there isn't a uniform understanding of intelligence or the intellect. There is this very rich and vibrant discussion and debate amongst the classical scholars. And it's interesting because when we bring that into today's context with artificial intelligence and reasoning, some of those positions and some of those ideas actually have some interesting consequences in today's context. So we have human intelligence, but the scholars in theology, they mark prophetic intelligence as a specific class or category of intelligence amongst humans. So what's traditionally understood in Islamic theology is that humans are considered to be the best of creation as a result of their intellect and their ability to reason. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. And we have ennobled the children of Adam through their intellect and through their ability to reason. What was mentioned previously, Adam alayhi salam was taught the names of things, meaning that the humans were given this capacity to reason above and beyond animals and jinn, etc. And within this hierarchy of creation, humans are considered to be the best of creation. And within the hierarchy of humans, prophets are understood to be the best of humanity, since they have been specifically hand-selected and chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to spread the message and to call people to the truth, to call people back to reality. And prophets are understood to be infallible. That one of the features of prophets is who they are in terms of their institution as prophets, they're understood to be infallible. And that means that prophets have been protected from making sins and making mistakes. And the way this is understood in Islamic theology is that the prophetic intellects are considered to be the most complete intellects within humanity. And as a result, they have a greater grasp on reality, they have a greater grasp on truth, they have a greater grasp on morality. And as a result, they have a greater alignment with the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have complete compliance with the divine command because their intellects are complete amongst the whole of humanity. So scholars, they discuss this and they say, can a person's moral accountability and his taklif be greater if a person's intellect is increased and greater? And they argue this point. Some scholars have different positions, but some scholars, they argue this and they say that this is the case. If a person's intellect is greater, his understanding is greater, then his moral obligation is increased. And we see this in the prophets. For example, some prophets, they had particular obligations that were specific to them that weren't given to the rest of creation because they had greater intellect, so their moral responsibility and accountability was therefore greater. For example, Rasul, he was commanded, that stand in the night except for a small portion. And this specific prayer in the night was just for Rasul, it wasn't for the rest of creation. So we can understand that there's this relationship or this correlation between increase and the quality of your intellect, the quality of your intellect, and an increase in intellect and greater compliance with the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just to wrap up, this is just a brief foray into how we can understand the concept of intelligence and intellect in the light of Islamic theology and philosophy. And beyond this, there are greater discussions, there are more positions, there are more vibrant discussions. But I think it's important to realize that the notion we have of intelligence today when we speak about AI is very restricted to a computational notion or an idea of just completing formal reasoning. So the more intelligence you have, the greater your ability to conduct reasoning or your ability to compute information. But when we look at intelligence and aql from a sacred perspective, from the perspective of our Islamic tradition, intellect is what enables us to recognize the truth. It's what enables us to recognize reality, and it's what enables us to comply with the divine address and comply with the divine command. So for us, on a personal basis, more knowledge and an increase in intellect should actually result in a greater restraint over desires, greater compliance with the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an increase in morality from a personal perspective, as well as a greater understanding of true reality, the haqq, from a point of view in terms of understanding reality and what is true of reality. So in some regards, when we look at this concept of intelligence in the Islamic tradition, and we look at this idea of artificial intelligence, we see it's a misnomer. This isn't actual intelligence, right? Machines can't imitate aql in this concept of the meaning, or in this concept that is defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Sharia. This is something exclusive to humans, and this is what enables humans to be potentially the best of creation, and potentially close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's keep in touch. If anyone's interested in keeping in touch, that's a QR code to my LinkedIn. That's my Twitter handle. I teach an online class, Intro to Islamic Theology, with Darul Qasim College based in Chicago. If anyone's interested in enrolling for our next batch, the link is up on the screen. But thank you for listening. How to change the slides? It's on preview, right? I think it's. Okay. I think it's being shared within just Zoom rather than on preview. Okay. How do you want to do? Yeah, so that's your file. Yep. Yeah. Then what do you want to do? So this is fine. So now it's on preview, and then maybe you have to share the screen, entire screen. Share the entire screen. Yeah. That's great. Good. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Nice to see a lot of faces here. So to start off, inshallah, I'll be talking about how GreenTech Apps Foundation uses AI to empower Islamic education. Myself, I'm Riyasat Islam. From my day job, I'm an academic. I'm a lecturer in computer science at Queen Mary University of London. But besides that, I co-founded GreenTech Apps Foundation approximately 10 years ago with my colleagues who are now distributed across 3 countries. And I also lead the R&D department at the organization. So for this talk today, I'll be talking about mostly what we have been doing R&D stuff or AI-related stuff within GreenTech for the last 1 year. So GreenTech is a UK-registered Islamic charity. Our mission is to help Muslims understand Islam through educational technology. That's the overall mission. Alhamdulillah, over the years, we have reached more than 13 million people through our applications and EdTech resources. During off-peak season, we have approximately 2 to 3 million users, monthly active users. During peak time, which is during Ramadan, we have approximately 6 million monthly active users, alhamdulillah. And as I've mentioned, we have been operating around 10 years by this year. Within GreenTech, we have an R&D department. We started this R&D department approximately 2-3 years ago. And so the idea is that we build tools within our products that would be a bit innovative, not necessarily just simple app development or as such. So we have got some innovative tools that would come in within our products. Also, we help our other teams to optimize efficiency. And today I'll not be talking about our internal processes. I'm just going to be talking about some of the innovative stuff that we're trying to do within our products. And obviously we try and publish academic research as well and white papers. So that's the overall work that we're doing within the R&D department. Within our organization, as in terms of the R&D department, we do work broadly across human-computer interaction, which is generally my area of expertise, data science, AI. I mean, we have done a bit of voice recognition work, similar to what Tartil would be doing. We have a paper coming up, inshallah, soon. It's currently in review on that. But we are doing a lot of LLM work these days as well. Obviously, besides that, we have learning theory or educational theory that we try and integrate and see how we can improve our apps to make sure that we can serve the Muslims better, inshallah. So last year, I was presenting this in a slightly different way. Last year at this event, at the time, we were using Llama 3 to generate quiz questions. Llama 3 was good enough at the time to give us questions and maybe options, but it was getting the right, correct options wrong a lot of the times. So it wasn't good enough yet. So last year. But this year, I think this is approximately 4 or 5 months old already. So it was done in the second quarter. Using the recent models, Llama 4, and also OpenAI's GPT, the recent one that they came up with, the open source one, and also Claude. All of them have improved so much because they're already trained on, we like it or not, within translations and tafsir and all these resources that are publicly out there, it is already trained in that. And in our experiments, we have noticed that it can, a very high percentage, actually refer the exact quotations from the Quran, from the Sirah, from the Hadith, which is a bit of a challenge, because if you don't have an Islamic knowledge, it's very difficult to really be critically, checking out if these references are correct or not. So we are in a very, I would say a very tricky one, because the trust on what these LLMs are producing have increased, but then this is such a sensitive issue. Unless you have the correct background, it's very difficult to figure out how accurate these are. But in any case, we do have students of knowledge within the team, so we verify all of these outputs. And so alhamdulillah, we have been able to generate quiz questions, easy, medium, and advanced, along with the correct options and with feedback. So a bit of explanation. So you can necessarily, essentially, of course, being an academic, I can understand. You can use these as formative feedback. So this helps within the learning process. This is already within our product. If you go to our Quran app, you'll already be able to see this quiz inside, inshallah. And we are slowly expanding it across our Quran app and our Sadiq app, which is a newer one that we're trying to figure out. And we use these quizzes in multiple different ways as well. Sometimes we have events. People might just host a quiz contest, right? Internally and externally, we have been doing that. We also have what is called a Deen quiz that we had an app from before. But now we are trying to replace that. We haven't updated that for a long time now, but we are trying to replace that with some form of a Kahoot for Islam. If you're familiar with the app called Kahoot, you can host your own quiz within that. So it will have existing question bank. You can create your own. You can actually just fetch related topics from that app.
So we're trying to come up with that, inshallah. Allah knows best when, but we are still working on that. Inshallah, we will hopefully, maybe in 2 years' time, maybe you can have a proper app version. But internally, we're doing the testing because we want to make sure the content is authentic. That takes a lot of the time, but the rest of it, of course, it's much, much quicker. So that was one of the updates. To briefly explain, we are generating AI-assisted quiz, but it is definitely assessed and evaluated by students of knowledge that we have within our team. Another area of work that we have been doing is, if you have used one of our hadith apps, we present isnad, as in the chain of narration within our apps. We also have a Muslim scholars database that is connected to this. So when you are studying a hadith within our app, you will be able to refer to a brief biography of all the Sahabas and Tabi'in and whoever are in part of the chain of narration. You will be able to see that very quickly and easily. For the main 6 books of hadith, the Sahih Sittah, the database is quite solid, but within the Islamic literature for now, this chain of narration is not as structured for these two, Muwatta Malik and Musnad Ahmad, yet. So we are building on that. Alhamdulillah, we have been able to use LLMs. I think we used Llama 4 for this one, and we were able to come up with 95% accuracy in terms of characterizing the chain of narration. We're still having certain, the rest of the 5%, we're still having some issues with the tricky parts. What do we mean by the tricky parts? Sometimes the name itself is not mentioned. For example, it says, my father, right? Sometimes you would have Sahabi, teaching another set of students, but one of them would be their son. Or for Tabis or however it is, doesn't necessarily have to be Sahabas, right? So a father's son is with part of that narration. So sometimes they would not mention their own father's name, just say Abihi, my father. And so still not as good, but we're still working on that, because if we have the existing database available, we can easily fetch it back and replace it in that way. Sometimes we have branches within the same narrator chain. So it's not a single tree. There would be branches. So for example, Rasulullah said something, several Sahaba were there to witness what Rasulullah said, right? And so you would have chains within that, multiple Sahaba narrating the same hadith. And this is not only for Sahaba, it is also possible within the Tabi'in and Tabi'in as well. Okay? So this is still a challenge now, but we're still trying to work on it, inshallah. But given that it's such a small percent, I think there is approximately 30,000, at least in our database, in terms of Musnad Ahmad and Muwatta Malik, approximately 6% of those hadith texts needs further verification from the students of knowledge that we have within our team. So we're alhamdulillah been able to solve a lot of these challenges, because for Muwatta Malik and Musnad Ahmad, the database just wasn't there. We were using one existing database, but the quality was really bad. So we had to come up with our own solution for that. So inshallah, I think within the next quarter or 2 quarters from now, so the early next year, inshallah, the new narrative chain that we developed will be within the app, inshallah. That's the plan. So the third thing that I wanted to mention here today was, we already have a search product, Searchdeen. So whatever database that we have, Quran, Hadith, Sirah, all of them that we already have within our apps, we have a front end that goes and does search queries within that. We have added some of the Islamic fatwa websites like Islam QA as well. However, we're still not happy about the overall success of the information retrieval or search queries that are coming up. We're still trying to improve on that. We are benchmarking against Google against Quran.com, against Sunnah.com to see how our search would be going in terms of the metrics. And we are trying to integrate the existing ontologies that are available. So for example, in Leeds University, Professor Eric Atwell and his set of students have done brilliant work within last 14, 15 years, starting from Brother Qais Dukes, rahimahullah, who have passed away, I think, last year or the year before. So he started the work within Quran Corpus back in 2011. And so we have been basing a lot of our work on their knowledge that are publicly available. So papers are there, the data sets are there. So we are trying to integrate, as Brother Boumediene very early in his presentation mentioned, symbolic AI. So we're trying to ground our RAG pipeline within this, within these knowledge bases. So inshallah, going forward, we will be having our own knowledge graphs so that the hallucination can be as much as possible be minimized. One of the good thing about this way of doing, combining cognitive and symbolic AI is that the data that we're working with, we don't have to worry about the world models or dynamic data, vision models, nothing like that. It's static. Once we have generated the database, it's mashallah, sorted, right? If the scholars verify the information, it's done. We don't need to keep on generating these on the fly. Inshallah, moving forward, we'll have to optimize the chatbot experience, the responses and that, but the background, the knowledge base, the knowledge graphs behind the scenes will be solid and static. We don't have to, update it as much. So that's the plan, inshallah, going forward. So with that, I'd just like to end and say just an open call for collaboration, if possible, inshallah. Within our R&D team, we've got 5 people working across UK, Malaysia, and Bangladesh. Inshallah, we'll be working on knowledge graphs, contextual linking. Since I am also an HCI person, we do UX research. And upcoming NeurIPS 2025, inshallah, we'll be presenting a paper there, Muslims and ML workshop. And so if you'd like to intern with us or have any research collaboration, alhamdulillah, please feel free to reach out to me. And if there's anyone who would like to fund us as well, we're happy to have a chat, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks. So keep all the questions to the poster session because we are not running out of time. I'm just wondering what's going on. Yeah. Oops. That's not the right one. Yeah, the computer wants some other presentation. Let's see. So what should be? Because I don't see it on my phone actually. Yeah, I think it's not sharing. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, try to get short thoughts. Yeah, so I'm about 35 minutes late. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Maybe move to the next page. Oh, no, it's not here. They also had the same issue last time. I don't know what's going on with your presentations, but yeah, it's not here. Right. Let's just. Yeah, I think you got something here. So please don't complicate it. Just share this. Which one? This button? This one. This one. No, it's not done. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I had the same issue last time. Yeah, but I need to have many open because I have a couple of speakers, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, can you just play it by ear? Don't complicate it. Yeah, so it's working here. Yeah, it's okay. Just share whatever you want. Okay, yeah. Look here. Yeah, no. It's not frozen. Yeah, it's not here. Okay, why don't you just use this? No, don't touch anything. Yeah.
Just make this a bit larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just make it larger, so it's easier. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Shamim. Just a few tech issues here. Assalamu alaikum. Shamim, I'm the lead AI researcher for a biotech base in Barcelona called BIOS. I'm also part of the surgical robot vision group at UCL. So today I'll be talking about AI and the latest frontiers in medical technology. Just to quickly get a lay of the land, in terms of who we have here, how many people are from non-tech backgrounds? We can just get like a show of hands. Cool. So yeah, I'll make it as simple as we can so we can all follow along. So I'll divvy up this presentation into 3 different sections. So first we'll talk about the fundamentals in AI, talk about the different types of AI, the history behind it, the different types of landmarks that we went through. Then we'll talk about the current landscape, i.e. what does AI look like now? We've heard like a lot of buzz terms like Gen AI, LLMs, and the current industry. And then I'll segue into the actual topic that we're after, like i.e. what AI looks like in healthcare at the moment. We'll talk about the current limitations and the future advancements. So let's start with a quick AI 101. So in a sentence, what is AI? It's this ability for machines to basically do human tasks. So understanding patterns or basically just making predictions. So you've probably heard many synonyms for it. So AI, machine learning, data science, AGI, all of this falls under the same remit of general AI. Now, something more primal is data. What is actual data? Data is just digital information. So it comes in different forms, i.e. text, images, videos. What is a video? A video is just a collection of images that we call frames. Now, the different types of AI. So you've got your classical machine learning. So this is where if you've got data and you want to classify it, i.e. into different groups, hey, it's this data, all these data points, if they fall into a different class, we call that class, i.e. example, cat. If this is a different class, we call it a dog, so on and so forth. If it's something more continuous data, we can do something called regression. All of that will fall under what we call classical ML. Another branch of AI is computer vision. So this is where you give the AI images to understand. So you can give it a picture of a dog, let's say it's a dog, picture of a cat, let's say it's a cat, picture of a tumor, we should be able to say it's a tumor. We've got another field called reinforcement learning. So this is in a sentence, it's giving the ability for AI to learn from its mistakes to the extent that it's able to reach the level of human competency, i.e. learning from what we call a policy. And then we've got another branch called natural language processing, NLP. So we've seen like the current forms of it, right? ChatGPT, your Geminis, your Claudes of the world. Now, what do? These are very, very intellectual chatbots where you can do sentiment analysis, data processing, so on and so forth. Now, that's all well and good, but what do we do? Like 95 on a daily basis, what is machine learning? What do we actually do? So I think, as they say, like an image speaks 1,000 words. Like, this is what society thinks we do. This is what our friends think we do. This is what computer scientists think we do. This is what our bosses think we do. This is what sometimes we think we do, but this is what we actually do. It's just a lot of coding, and that's what actually AI involves. Now, let's quickly just go down memory lane in terms of what the recent landmarks that we've reached to get here. So 1957 was the first trainable neural network that was demonstrated from Cornell University. So this was by Frank Rosenblatt. 1997, another major landmark. This was IBM Deep Blue versus Garry Kasparov. Garry Kasparov was the best chess player on the planet, but IBM had created a system which had beat Garry Kasparov in the second match. Again, this was monumental in the world of AI because this is the first time a machine had beaten a human. 2016, we had something more complex than chess. So we put AI to the test. Can AI beat something that's more rigorous, more in terms of complexity-wise, more vast than chess? And yes, that did happen in 2016. So we had AlphaGo. So this was developed by the Google DeepMind team, where they created a system to beat the best Go player on the planet. So that was Lee Sedol from South Korea. And his job in life was just to be good at Go. This is a very ancient game, more complex than chess. How much more complex than chess? 10 to 580 times more complex than chess. So that's one with 580 times, 580 zeros more complex than chess. Yet AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol 4 times. So that was a huge breakthrough on in the world of AI. Again, this wasn't breaking news. In some tech papers, this didn't make the first pages, but this was really groundbreaking. That happened in 2016. But what happened in 2017? The birth of LLMs. Obviously, this came out before, but what really rocked the AI world was in 2017, when this paper came out. Everyone is probably heard of this paper. It's called Attention is All You Need. Now, this is the architecture that really spurred the LLM craze. So there's 2 things that I'll point you to, but this is basically something actually quite simple and quite in terms of complexity-wise isn't quite complex, but the way they've done the architecture, it produced phenomenal results. That was the novelty here. Now, what they did was once they got this type of data, this architecture, in parallel, there was also advancements happening in computing. So in GPU compute, so both of them aligned together. We've got the first the first blueprints for the first LLM. Now, this is called the transformer architecture. Once they got that running, they trained it on the entire internet, all of PubMed, all of Wikipedia, basically all the data that we know of, they've trained it on that. And that paper was released in 2017. Now, there's two things I want to highlight here, is the authors and the year. So I've highlighted it there. Now, that paper was released in 2017. Now, we first got access to ChatGPT, what was that, in November 2022? So 5 years later, we got access to the technology. But this research actually happened, what, 5 years ago? Now, where did this research happen? That's where the big circle comes in. All of this research happened in Google Labs. This paper was produced by Google Labs. So that shows now, in terms of the latest AI advancements, are not happening in academia anymore. It's actually happening in industry. So when it comes to the latest research, it's not in your Imperials or your Oxfords or your Cambridge in that order. Did my undergrad here, but it's actually in industry. Now, what's ChatGPT's future? So right now, this is the current uptake. It took, for ChatGPT to hit the market, it took 2 months to hit 100 million users, more than Facebook, more than Instagram. It was phenomenal. It was very disruptive. But if you look at the phase that we're going through now, in 1988, we went through a similar phase where math teachers were protesting against the calculator. Should it be used in exams? Is it gonna really water down math competency? Is this the same phase that we're going through? What's the current tech landscape then? So right now, the most expensive commodity that we have is actually, people will say it's gold, it's silver, but if you look at it, it's actually data. Data is more expensive than in gold and silver, because if you do FTSE 100, if you look at the FTSE 100, the top 40% or the top 50% of companies, they're all tech companies. Some of these companies are even bigger than banks. Why is that? What makes them bigger than banks? Because they've got access to data. And this, I think, segues to another discussion that I'm going to go into. We've all heard the argument about privatization of the NHS. Why is that? Like, there's a lot of people that talk about it. Oh, should we privatize it? Should we follow the American model, or should we follow the New Zealand model, so on and so forth? But why is that? Fundamentally, a lot of people don't really pick up on this point, is that what the Yanks want is they want it to be privatized because they want our data. That's one of the main reasons why, because we live in something called a heterogeneous society. What does a heterogeneous society mean? It means that we have data in samples that are of specific segments, meaning we live in the UK where we've got ample, all walks of life, whites, blacks, Asian, Caucasians, all different types. You compare that data set to a data set in Singapore, where it's just Asians, or in Norway, where it's just Caucasians. This is gold dust for AI. Why? Because that means you can make your model generalizable to any sort of data. This is the reason why they want to move to that privatization model, to get hold of this data that we have in the UK. Okay, so now specializing mainly into our discussion today, AI in healthcare. So right now, there's many advancements, but the three main advancements that we've got now are the smarter diagnostics. So that's quicker detections. Then we've got multimodal models that are able to do scans, text, understand text, lab results together. Surgical robots able to do surgical procedures now in theater. Well, we'll talk more about that. Okay, so my specialty is mainly in computer vision. Right now, this is the ability to understand images. The ability to understand images. So I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to using social media, but anyone use TikTok here? Yeah, so you've probably done one of these solve the puzzle things. Now that is actually a security feature. So TikTok makes you do this rotation thing, right? To rotate it, because the best computers or the best AI in the world is not able to beat a human in that. That's the limitation where we are now. This is where the advancement of computer vision is, where we don't have models that can do what a human can do in that speed. Now, where are we in terms of surgical robots? So right now, where we are is autonomous suturing we've got. So this was developed by the guys at Johns Hopkins University in 2016, where they were able to suture. So suture is sewing. So after a wound is formed, to sewing it back up, that's called suturing. So they were able to demonstrate via the STAR machine, which they created, it was able to suture a human body or a wound back. Ironically, it's the end of a surgery, but still there's limitations in terms of depth perception. So where are we in terms of the holy grail in computer vision? Right now, the ability to go from a 2D image understand a 2D image to a 3D reconstruction is still very, very limited. So this is very, really essential for real-time guidance to get robots to do the same type of procedures that humans do. This is why it's still not clinically reliable. But again, this is a lot of work and research has gone into it in terms of the last 60 years. So my work is mainly in polypectomy, trying to understand how we can remove polyps in the body. Again, trying to do this in real time. Right now, robots are able to do this, but they don't understand the temporal signal. So you can tell them, hey, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a polyp. It'll understand it, but it doesn't really understand where it is in terms of the temporal sequence in a operation. Now, this is what we're training robots to do. Again, that's one version of AI, but there's other things that are happening in AI in the healthcare sphere. So example, right now, there's research that's actually done in the opposite building, where they're trying to take ECG from the ear. Why would you want to take it from the ear? Because if you want to take real ECG, you want to take it with 12 leads on the chest. But that's difficult, right? Putting pads all over the place, etc. So what do you want to do? What's the next best thing? So there's a lot of research done by Apple where they had created algorithm where you can take it from your wristwatch. But imagine someone who's amputated. What do you do then? So then you've got the option, hey, can we take it from the ear? So this is an example. Say like you've got your signal that's coming from the human body, you've got noise coming in, and you want to detect the ECG. Now this ECG is buried in the signal here somewhere. This signal is the ECG plus motion plus motion and some other noise. Now you want to filter that out. Great. So you can use AI here, and you can see this is what AI produced after cleaning it. And how good is it compared to a real ECG data? You can see it's very comparable. Now, this is very transferable domains because likewise, there's a professor at Oxford who heads the robotics team there. Now, he did the same technology and he applied it to Boeing jet engine health monitoring. So from understanding how patients degrade, he used the same technology and he wanted to see how engines degrade. He's now a multi-millionaire. Cool. So now just to conclude, as you can see, AI is really rapidly advancing and reshaping every part of healthcare. We're still at its infancy, at its early stages, but it's showing promises. Where is it showing promises? In safer surgeries, faster diagnosis, more in personalized healthcare. Again, AI is here not to replace clinicians. It's mainly to enhance and support them. Any questions? Please let me know. I think we're short on time anyway, so
So I would be doing the process.
No problem.
Yeah, so
Cool.
yeah, so with the
feel free to turn it after, inshallah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to find actually okay. There are a lot of windows. I'm trying to shut down things. By email, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you think we can just share the discount?
If you can sit down with them
Yeah,
immediately.
Dante is better.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then if you go back onto Zoom.
It's fine?
Yep, and then share. Yep.
This is all?
Do you wanna make it full screen as well?
What's screen?
Yeah, full screen. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can make it like 10 minutes. Yeah.
10 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, but just try to finish our stuff, so. I have to ask the president.
Can you hear me? Hello, okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah, awesome. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so I'll give a condensed version of this talk and try to about the topic of large language models that the previous talk introduced, luckily, so we can skip a few slides. And I want to describe some of the modern frontiers. So also quick show of hands. I know that a similar question was asked. Who works with large language models? Yeah, awesome. Who would like to understand how they work on the inside? Okay, who understands them already? Okay, cool. There are questions, please ask me. So, very briefly about me, my background is mathematics, computer science. I was previously a co-founder and CTO of a AI startup. I then left it and decided to return into academia. So I'm doing my PhD now, actually here at Imperial. Currently, I'm actually visiting Abu Dhabi. So if anyone is there, come and say hi. That's my website where you find all the contact details that you need. Generally, I am working on LLM agents and LLM reasoning. Okay, so what are large language models in its kind of like basic? I want you to have a few key takeaways today, right? And so one of them is the question, what are large language models? And really, I mean, we know this interface, right? So some of us use it through this interface. Those that didn't raise their hand but are using this interface, you are using large language models because you're using ChatGPT. I don't use ChatGPT, I use the Chinese versions. I like them more. I like Qwen and DeepSeek, really much better answers. Also potentially better companies running them. So, but generally you have these kind of thinking and search buttons. So I want to talk about these a little bit as well. But in the end, no matter which of these buttons you click, except for maybe like image generation, but if you just consider classical large language models, right? So that's the key takeaway for you is they are text in and text out, right? So there is never anything else going in and never anything else going out, right? So whatever they do in between is always just text, right? There is never feelings, there is never any like actual reasoning, is always text in, text out, right? So that's the key takeaway. I don't have a quiz. I do teach usually, but I don't have a quiz today, but if I had one, this question would be on it, right? Okay. So yeah. There's, wait, I'll move this maybe. Maybe like this. Cool. So for example, human says, what are LLMs? LLM starts answering large, or something else. So, but to understand them a little bit better on the inside, and I'll speed up a little bit. Really, the key thing that happens is actually quite simple. In the end, a sentence, like what are LLMs, is split into individual, something called tokens. You can think of them as just words for simplicity, but usually, like, for example, LLMs ends with an S. You want to have S as a plural, as a separate token, right? But token really is just words or unit representations of this sentence. These are just transferred into numbers, right? So literally IDs like 2,789, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And each of these is then transferred into something called a vector, which is just high dimension, like a lot of numbers for each word. An LLM operates on these vectors. And inside an LLM, on the outside, it's text in and text out. On the inside, it's vectors in, vectors out. There is never anything else happening. So it's always this box of numbers in and another box of numbers out, right? And at the end, to predict and then how does it do it? It gets like a text, a lot of vectors, and then it just predicts the next word. What does predicting the next word mean? It means it predicts a probability over all its available words. So it cannot actually predict arbitrary things, right? So if you come up with a new emoji, right? The like sajda emoji, the LLM will not be able to predict it because it's not in its vocab. So the vocab of an LLM is actually fixed. And the way an LLM predicts the next word and then the next word and then the next word is always the same way. And that is by predicting a score, like a probability almost, so a number between 0 and 1, over each word in the vocab. So if there's 1,000 words in the vocab in total, it will just say the word the has probability like 0.01 to appear as the next word. But the word, I don't know, large has the probability like 80% to appear as the next word, right? And then you just pick the maximum value, or you can do other things. And that's how the LLM works. And then that's how it predicts the next word, right? So given the text, what are LLMs? It will produce large. How does it then continue producing the word after that? It appends this large word back to here. So it pretends you have written what are LLMs, large, and then it starts predicting further, right? So it just like continues from there. And that repeats until it either runs out of credits, compute, or just decides to finish. Okay, so this is how LLMs work. Text in, text out, right? One token at a time. And tokens are just numbers or vectors. This is how LLMs work. Yeah, this is the paper that, so what are large language models inside? So in the end, you can do this in many, many different ways. The modern way uses this architecture called transformers, right? But there are modern architectures that have evolved since then. Yeah, so that's kind of it. You can reach out to me later if you want an in-depth talk about these. Now, maybe I'll focus just on one more part on what do we do with LLMs. So when we had this interface in the beginning and we could click search or thinking or all of these things, in the end, we know LLMs are just text in and text out. So when you click search, how does it search by doing just text in, text out? Really, this is just extra software that lays on top of it, which extracts like the first output from an LLM and then just puts it into Google search or something, and then puts that text as output, right? The website, for example, back into the LLM. So it's always text in, text out, right? Tools could be like calculators, I don't know, Excel and stuff like this. Again, the same principle applies. LLMs always, you need to wrap text around to make them meaningful. Another concept you might have heard is this thinking or test time scaling. There's different ways how you can think about it. One particular approach that is used in production with the Frontier Labs is the model, instead of producing just one answer, it produces several answers. Not just one word, but like a few answers. And then another model or some other mechanism gives a ranking to these. And then it picks the best and then continues producing answers from there, right? So it kind of almost produces the first sentence and then 3 sentences and then thinks which one was best, and then picks the best one and then continues generating from there, right? So this is like one way how test time scaling works. Yeah, so these are kind of like very common applications. We've seen like healthcare as well. There's task automation that's kind of people are trying to build these days. There's deep research, right, where you kind of send off, it does a lot of search and produces a report for you. It can do coding for you. All of these are still like some of it is very impressive, some of it is quite limited. But in the end, underneath it always works the same way. Yeah, I think that's it. There is one final thing, and then I'll. So there's a lot of slides. Do connect with me if you want to have a longer talk on this. We can organize it. But if you have an opportunity, I'm currently trying to produce also some more research on like Islam and AI. So if you want to help me out, you can fill in this form. And yeah, thank you very much.
So, Assalamu alaikum. Just a quick question before maybe I begin my talk. How many of you are familiar with technical machine learning statistics? All right. Okay, I'll try to be kind of.
Yes, let's try to finish at the last prayer.
Inshallah, I'll try to be doing it in 5 minutes. So, once again, today, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, my name is Hussam. I'm a postdoc at UCL at the Gatsby Computational Neuroscience Unit, and today I'll be talking about a statistical paper that we just published. So it's I'm going to try to be very high level and not focus on the technical details. So we talked about some problems, for example, personalized medicine or I don't know, recommendation systems or ad placement. In many of those problems, you can formulate them statistically as a problem in which you have observed the context that is drawn from a stochastic distribution. So, for example, the context is the user information or the patient information, whether it be the gender, their age, any information you have about them. Then you take a treatment for that very specific user, and then you observe a loss. So it's not a supervised learning setting, rather it is a reinforcement learning setting in which you have partial information. In many causal inference problems, you actually have scalar outcomes. What do I mean by that? So typically, in many problems that you have in machine learnings, you actually summarize the information, about the outcome as just a number, right? For example, you might want to, measure blood pressure, cholesterol level, or just measure the income, etc. But in many cases, actually, the outcome is actually structured. What do I mean by structured? It can be an image, for example, a medical imaging, image, or it can be, for example, some text. So, for example, here you have a policy. We just talked about LLMs. You may have an outcome which is directly the text, right? So this outcome, for example, is neutral. Here you have a more engaging way of, creating this outcome. So you have somehow different latent models that will generate this. And so in many causal inference models, we have this limitation, which is looking at the expectation of the outcome distribution. So once again, I repeat, it's just a scalar information. rather in many problems which have structure like images, graphs, text, actually looking at the entire distribution is interesting. And also when you look at the mean of the outcome distribution, as I have drawn in this image, it's not a sufficient information to characterize the distribution trivially. So all those distributions have the same mean and they don't have the same variances or skewness and so on. So in our paper, we actually extended the framework, which I'm not gonna give any details, actually embeds the full outcome distribution as you can see here in an RKHS. What is an RKHS? An RKHS is just a Hilbert space. A Hilbert space is a Euclidean space which has distances and many geometrical features. So we actually have a mean to represent the full outcome distributions as objects in that Hilbert space, and we can actually measure distances inside the RKHS and compare not only the expectation of the outcome distribution, but rather the full outcome distributions themselves by using here an MMD method. So does that make sense to some of you? I hope it does. But anyway, morally, you can just say that this object is just a statistic to characterize, once again, the full outcome distribution. You can here compare the two distributions by measuring a distance inside that Hilbert space. And in that paper, I'm not sure if it's of interest to many of you, but we actually provided a plugin estimator and a doubly robust estimator. So what is a doubly robust estimator? It is an estimator which is derived from a so-called efficient influence function, which is a way to do more efficient statistics in terms of robustness to Poisson parameters, but also in terms of accelerating convergence rates. Anyway, this estimator has more interesting properties than the most naive estimator, which is that one. We did some experiments in which we showed that our estimator that we derived recovered asymptotic normality. So recovering asymptotic normality is actually a property which is of interest in many statistical estimators. So many statistical estimators recover that asymptotic normality. So it means that they have this Gaussian shape. Some of them don't. And because we recovered asymptotic normality, we were able to do hypothesis testing. So hypothesis testing is a framework in statistics in which we want to actually validate or invalidate a hypothesis, here being that there is a treatment effect or not. And so to summarize, in this paper of us, we actually just extended a framework that already existed to policy evaluation. We provided a double robust estimator, which probably had better statistical properties. Because of that, we did two applications in testing and sampling. But morally, if without like the high level intuition is just to say that this framework actually allows you to do causal inference on structural outcomes. So you don't need to, have this scalar representation of an image or a scalar representation of a text or whatsoever. You just have to take this image, you embed it with a kernel, and then you can do causal inference directly. And so it also allows to do distributional causal inference as well, because you have a full characterization of the outcome distribution. And thank you for your attention.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just have a break for the Asr and then we'll come back. Let's try to come back at 3:10, inshallah, just because we are running quite late on the schedule. So just pray and come back. Yeah, don't get around. Yeah, thank you.
Start recording.
Yeah, it started, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I had two versions of insights.
Okay.
One which was known here and one which was from here, so we moved to 5 minutes. So I said to believe it, like, let's do the short version, it's easier. Basically,
Yeah, let's start. Should we start?
Yeah, nice to meet you. You're saying, right? Yes, I understand.
You want to start or you want to wait for people to come?
Yeah, is my copy?
It's on.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, our next speaker is Omar Chaudhry, who will be talking the use of AI to train surgeons. Yeah, thank you. 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, please, you are.
Okay, that's
And Omar is talking 1 hour.
okay. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Omar, and I'm a postgraduate researcher in the University of Leeds. And whilst my talk isn't directly on the intersection between AI and Islam, it's about trying to train surgeons. Over 5 billion people worldwide lack access to the same kind of surgical care that you and I experience. And the majority of those are in the Muslim countries. So this is a topic that's highly important to all of us. But I want to talk about some of the key principles that I use in applied AI research, especially important when researching AI in healthcare. Number one is actually understanding the context. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? Why is it important? And number two is understanding the users. So I know I have a clear demographic. I'm targeting the surgeons to be able to use this technology to help train them. And lastly, it's understanding the solution. How does it work? How can I explain it to other people? What are its pros and what are its limitations? But the key thing is all about understanding. And going back to this as you continue to develop your AI. To set the context, as I mentioned, the majority of the world's population lack access to surgery. And in low and middle income countries, LMICs, there's a huge number of surgeons that are required to meet the demand. 143 million surgical cases need to be performed annually. That number has now risen to 160 million. This was from 10 years ago. And a lot of the deaths which occur in these countries are treatable through surgery. And so this is a global healthcare crisis. And the solution that I propose is by training surgeons to perform minimally invasive surgery. So this is a well-known type of technique where the surgeon will use a smaller incision, which will result in reduced blood loss and risk of infection. So the patient will have better outcomes. But on top of that, the patient requires fewer medication and a shorter time in hospital, which means if you can convert those open invasive procedures using minimally invasive techniques, you can alleviate this, the burden on the fragile healthcare systems. In the UK, we're quite privileged, where trainees will get one-to-one time several times throughout the year, dedicated boot camps. But those in the poorer countries aren't as privileged. And so when you combine all of this together, you get the context to be able to understand the problem. Now, I won't go into the details, but as Shamim mentioned, there's a huge problem when it comes to having high quality data sets in AI. And in our space, the data sets are either robotic, in simulation, they're inside of the body, but we're focusing on training. So it looks like this, but again, they don't have enough high quality annotations that we can use for training the models. So for years now, I've been collecting my own data sets. So we use electromagnetic tracking systems to be able to get the exact locations of the tooltips. And over the years, we've just continuously improved the equipment that we've been using to try and get even better and better quality data with different kinds of surgeons from different specialties. Overall, we have a decent distribution between the low, middle, medium, and high levels of skill. And this gives me a great opportunity to be able to talk to them. And the number one question, which they always have, is will AI replace me? And I tell them, yes, in this aspect, I'm trying to create an AI that exactly does their job. I want to create something that's as good as them to train the trainees. To do that, we need to focus on automated surgical skill assessment techniques. And again, by working and understanding the users, I have a list of criteria to be real-time, objective, generalizable, understandable, and efficient. In other words, we're trying to build some rogue AI
and that's what the users want. This is, for example, some detail of the pipelines in which we use to be able to train our AI models. And the important thing here is that we always have to focus on the generalizability. Will the models work on different data sets? And because we want to focus on the poorer countries, we have to think about optimization techniques to run on cheaper hardware. And so we can get extremely good results, fast and accurate, that give us the full objective metrics that are required for evaluating surgical skill. But again, that is not how the trainees train. The way they train looks like this, right? So we go back to the problem. You have a trainee communicating with a trainer. They'll be manipulating two surgical instruments in a training simulator box. And there's a camera that lets them see the feed on the monitor. By recording just simply the audio conversation that they have, along with the video, you can build, and this is the future work that I am doing now, a more intelligent AI system that's able to give them human-like feedback that's similar to how they actually train. And so the answer to the question of the title, can AI be used to train surgeons? Yes, AI can. Thank you for listening. No, that is very good, thanks. That's yeah. Yep, that's fine. Let me just move on. So, yeah, so was it this button or which button is in first?
Where's Brother Omar? Omar,
Yeah, so
we need your specialists. Yeah.
is it here or which button should I push? That one or? That one, okay. That one. If you can do us 5 minutes, maybe next time.
No pressure. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Hayat Qureshi. I've been in education for the last 25 years. My background is quality assurance, where I built institutes. I have the blessing to build 2 institutes in the UK and one in Aramco in Saudi Arabia with an investment of $60 million. My background is engineering, and my first degree is in electronics and second degree is in mobile and satellite communication. And I ended up doing Islamic finance and management. Please don't ask me why. Okay. So today's topic is about going back in the history and connecting 3 distinct dots. We're going to go back in a very reverse order. So the dates are correct. So please don't worry when you see the dates, they are in the right order. Okay, so there are 3 turning points in education in reverse chronology. The first one is the 2 sigma problem. By the way, have anyone in this room heard of Bloom's taxonomy? Okay, anyone heard of 2 sigma problem? Okay, by the time we finish this, hopefully you will have both of them. Okay, the second one is Aristotelian pedagogy, and these dates are correct. They are in this order. And the last one, the proposed solution. So let's start with the first one, the 2 sigma problem. It's a very classical bell-shaped diagram, where in the middle we have the average. On the left quadrant is the negative values, and on the right side we have the positive value. But this is just a sketch you need to keep in mind. And when I'm going to share the next slide, I want you to be assuming that there are 30 students in a class and 1 teacher. If these 30 students are being taught by 1 teacher, the average result is 50%, which is the middle line, which is a blue dotted line. This is the average score every day, every student will get it. Some of them will understand the topic, some of them will not able to progress. So that is why it's 50%. What Bloom says, if these students get formative assessment and the lesson is being broken down into chunks and there is a continuous assessment and a constructive feedback, same student can move up to 30%, which is a green line. This is the first derivation. But the second one is the most interesting one. Same students, if they get one-to-one tuition and they have the opportunity to study with that tutor, their performance will significantly improve to 90%. That your red dot is the second sigma problem. Now, this person, the Bloom, Benjamin Bloom, who proposed this in 1984, is the same person who came up with this Bloom taxonomy. They are the same person. The only difference is 28 years ago, in 1956, he proposed this pyramid, the Bloom's taxonomy, and 28 years later, he proposed this 2 sigma problem. So the solution to this problem is is hidden in the history already. Anyone? Because of the time, this is Socrates. We call him Socrates as well. His student is Plato, also known as Aflatun. His student is Aristotle. Anyone knows who's the student of Aristotle by any chance? Yes, Alexander the Great. So the first 3 pillars of wisdom are putting the knowledge into action. And Alexander the Great, he got one-to-one tutoring from Aristotle from the age of 13 to 16. And from the age of 20, we know the rest of the history. So that is the power of 2 sigma problem. When the same student get one-to-one tutoring from the giants of the knowledge, they end up in conquering the world. So the solution is, I call it the pedagogical triad, and I don't know where the picture's gone. Okay, let me see, come out, okay. I'm sure you can see the picture on the right. But I need your help over there. I want you to rescue me, please. Okay, so you can see the picture here in this. So as you can see here, there is a pedagogical triad going on. Aristotle on the top, Alexander on the right, and on the left we have the chatbot. Now the way the education landscape is going to change, I'm going to be surprised in the next 5 years, the teachers will be graduating with a PGCE degree. I cannot wait just on that time to see fully bringing AI content in the classes and teaching with the AI with the help of AI assistant in the class. This will completely change the landscape and the way we're going to deliver. So there are 3 things in it. I will briefly touch base on them. The first one, cognitive alignment, where AI will extract all the Bloom's taxonomy and will map it with a formative target feedback with a high order cognition. The second one is ethical literacy. Doesn't matter you have the best gadget in the world, but unless there is an AI ethical agency in the form of a teacher is there, it's not gonna work. And the last one, to make sure the policies are there for the teachers for the engagement and moral accountability. We all know the AI tutoring works because it gives constant feedback and it gives you, and this is where the mastery learning comes in. Okay, now I'm just going to focus on the 3rd bullet point because of the shortage of time. Meta-analysis is being done by this one, and at the moment we have observed through the results, there is a 40% increment in the progress of the students who are using the chatbots and those who are not using. So they are not meeting the first derivation, but they are getting very close to the first kind of derivation. And it wouldn't be very long when we will be solving the second sigma problem as well. Okay. The Khan Academy is also looking into it. Obviously, they have been given the ChatGPT 4 before the release of it, where Salman Khan, who is the owner of it, at the backing of the Microsoft, he's working on it, and he has to report to Bill Gates as well. But this work is again on the premises is not to provide the solutions directly. I have tried these services. They're still not available in the UK, but in the USA, they are available for the subscription. They are trying to bring this element as well, where the student can go and interact with the chatbots directly without getting the answers. So this is the extension of the Bloom's taxonomy: recognize, understand, apply, evaluate, create, and navigate ethically. And I'll just jump to the final one, the three-dimensional framework. So in a nutshell, it's a three-dimension framework where it develops a historical philosophical framework situating AI tutoring with a lineage of personalized dialogic pedagogy. The second one, it theorizes AI literacy as a 21st century realization of Bloom's taxonomy, extending from cognitive mastery to ethical evaluation. The third one, it outlines the implication for sustainable higher education design, where mastery learning, ethical reasoning, and digital competence are mutually reinforcing. They may sound very heavy words at the moment, but working with 3,500 students on day-to-day as a program leader, I'm responsible for 2 degree programs, have a team of 12 module leaders. I need to bring AI in the curriculum. I need to make sure the students have AI employability ready curriculum by the time they graduate. Otherwise, they will fall behind. So this thing needs to be implemented in all the education all the education institutes across the globe. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have this like something like that. So how are you? That's to be
Any user.
Ah, okay. So can I download or not?
Let's just present. It'll be easier for you.
Ah, okay. Do you know how to, okay. Share. Slideshow.
Mm.
But I need to do that. Wait, so I need to do that. Zoom. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. There are people online.
No, I didn't share the link because I wanted people to come. But I'm recording somehow. Okay. So what do I?
No, just do slideshows.
A slideshow.
Yeah. Mm.
Is this the first one? Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, so you got like, say 20 minutes.
So can everyone hear me with my normal?
No, no, yeah. You need
Okay.
microphone. 20 minutes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Since we have to go fast, I write about what I'm talking about here as my Substack, if you want to see it. What, does this have a, do I still have to click this? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to talk about AI ethics and faith. We've had a lot of primers. Thank you all. So I'm going to go quickly through the beginning section. But I did want to start with this slide. So my career has been mostly in AI products and frontier tech, but I've also worked quite a lot with the creative sector and the arts. And this actually is an image of a British artist called Jonathan Yeo. And I don't know if anyone has seen he did a portrait of Prince Charles, which was like all in red and everyone hated it. Yeah, okay. So he is very well known. And this is actually him in the Royal Academy of Art in London. And he's creating a portrait. So he's known for portraits, but this is the first self-portrait that he ever made using Google Tilt Brush. So he's creating this portrait of himself in 3D. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I don't think we probably need Johnny in the room to be making a self-portrait of himself using 3D ever again. And I think the question that we sort of have to grapple with when we think about what happens next with AI and all these amazing conversations we've been having is, what is the philosophical role about technology in our lives, and what is the role of the artist, the imagination, the creative spirit? And I'm sure many of you are thinking about that in your various ways. Obviously, I've worked mostly in big technology companies, and I think that this is a time for them to really take a lead on ethics, which, is very difficult when you're led by a profit. But I also believe that the future of how we design AI systems is going to really be about, we just had a talk on learning, it's going to be cross-disciplinary. We're going to have to include philosophers, artists, linguists, and go beyond simply training models for optimized outcomes. So it is an inflection point. We've had quite a few definitions of this, but I'm trying to, for myself, separate because of the language of it. So most of you guys are in the space, you're technical, so you understand the technical differences, but for society, how do we separate? We have we know that it's a general purpose technology. AI can be used for wars and for autonomous weapons and for medicine and for surgery. So we have this moment where it's suddenly everywhere. Obviously everything from Google Maps to ChatGPT, and I think of that as cultural. And then we have what's scientific. And I think to be able to separate that is helpful in thinking about where we want to apply, this idea of, what's philosophically different about AI, if it's just helping us to make, better surgeons versus what does it mean for surgeons to think about what their role is in the world today. Obviously, it's an amplifier, and it's not standalone. So I think this is also something that we don't talk about enough, is that we're here at Imperial College. AI is not just about, machine learning. It really extends and is deeply connected to everything from physical data centers to semiconductors, obviously quantum computing. And many of you are working in these different domains of what AI is and will become. And I think we've really linearize it. And is this important for ethics and how we frame the future of AI? Of course it is, because AI is fundamentally an extractive industry. Data centers are physical, they're made of concrete. AI runs and the internet runs off of fiber optic cables, and it is deeply connected to geopolitics and so on. So I think when we come back to ethics and technology, we can't separate that. It's just not just what we're experiencing on ChatGPT lying to us. Obviously, we've talked a bit about chess. So this is Lee Sedol playing Go. Who's calling? I was like, thank God it's not my fault. Anyway, Lee Sedol, does everybody know about AlphaGo? Do I have to tell you about it? Yes. Yes. Anyway, AlphaGo. So the reason I have that, I think that AlphaGo is probably the first time we saw a machine being creative. This Go is thousands of years old. It's a game that's been played, and a lot of it is about intuition. And he was a great player of this game Go at the time, and DeepMind developed this tool that ended up beating him, and it actually played a move that no human would ever have logically played before. And what happened after this moment, this is 2017, is actually the way Go players changed the game, played the game changed. And so it was sort of this first kind of public moment of the human and machine in this kind of dance together, and thinking about what does it mean to be creative, to be inventive. So I think it's quite a nice moment. Obviously, we've talked about, amazing, this is amazing. Obviously, AI does incredible things, kind of like magic. Brain-computer interfaces are changing really how we think about science and the body. And so I'm making a point here, obviously, about increasingly AI is about not just what's embedded in our brains, but about in our bodies. And we have to sort of be aware of that. And I'll talk a bit about this stuff anyway. I can send you my slides later. I'm just going quickly. Obviously, AI has all its harms. That's what ethics comes in. Nobody here needs to be told about deepfakes and, election stuff and surveillance and autonomous weapons and all of the fears that AI has embedded in society and politics and economies. In many ways, AI obviously reflects the inequalities and injustices of society. If people are losing income or losing their jobs, that's not really balancing out with the profits that certain companies are making. So I think these are things that you guys are very familiar with, but I think it's worth coming back to. And also, you know, it is also making us stupider. That's like a fact, right? Obviously, like we don't need scientists to tell us that using generative platforms is not necessarily making most people more intelligent. Anyway, so to come to faith. So I'm actually very lucky because I got to co-author a paper with two people here today on Islamic ethics and AI. So I hope you guys will read it and give your thoughts. But Boumediene was one of them, so you can't say anything critical, I think, about it. Anyway, so I'm really interested in this idea of like, what is belief and science and tech? And so, as you guys know, mathematics has always been driven off of belief. The way we think about maths and AI systems and machine learning is very deterministic, very much based on singular outcomes, and very much based on processing and efficiency and optimization. But throughout human history, mathematics has been influenced by belief. And, you know, we've talked about Aristotle, we've talked about the Enlightenment a couple of times here. We obviously know that there was this moment in the European Enlightenment where this idea of, you know, rationality came into like mainstream maths. And that is really what modern AI has inherited, sort of this Western discourse on the idea of the role of mathematics. And this quote is, I don't know if you guys know Stephen Wolfram, but he invented this thing called Mathematica, which you should out. And then, you know, regarding obviously Islamic history, there's all kinds of eras of Islamic history, but we all know about algebra, and really algebra is one of the roots of contemporary AI. It's the reason we have equations, and it was really built and designed around the idea of symmetry and the cosmos. It wasn't just about solving problems. And I think that is really important for us to be aware of when we think about the role of maths and how we design today. So this is another artist. And the reason I put this here is like, as we think about machines and belief in human, we sort of are like in this like crazy space of like, they're taking our jobs or our lives, or they're embedding in our brains. Are they tools? Are they collaborators? And I think we have to continue to realize that this is going to be an ongoing conversation that we have. Our beliefs will evolve with technologies, and our role as sort of intelligent beings is going to shift over time. This is an artist called Sugwen Chung, and she actually works with robots that she designs and builds, and they sort of paint alongside of her, and it's a kind of collaborative dance, and she's always trying to make the point. She's actually a creative technologist and an engineer, and this is her, I think, at MIT Media Lab, where she talks about this idea of machine and human moving together. And who talked about intelligence in Islamic? Someone here did a really interesting talk. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. So anyway, so obviously intelligence is not just cognitive, as you know, his talk was, you know, it's about our bodies, it's about spirituality, it's about, you know, how you experience the world around you. Other species are intelligent. We have more than human intelligence. There's so many ways of defining intelligence. And there's an amazing opportunity in my mind as to when we think about like a future, more ethical framing of where AI could go, that we're actually thinking about intelligence more broadly and holistically. And this is actually, I really like his work. He works on neuroscience and, you know, sort of what is the idea of like cognitive intelligence, and really how much beyond just the brain could computers go if we were to program that into the idea of intelligence. So what is AI missing? So this is like a bit gloomy, but obviously like, you know, most people in the world actually identify as religious or spiritually religious, and you know, AI doesn't really account for that, as everybody here knows. It's built off of sort of objective mathematical constructs and logic, and that is a huge gap in what we think about in the systems that we're building. The idea of belief, of intuition, of knowing doesn't feature at all in the systems that we've created and that we're building. So there's a differential between like what we call secular ethics and faith-based ethics, and the idea of like a trust in the divine or metaphysics is just not at all programmed into the systems that we have built. And so it is called a problem in AI epistemology, which is actually a word that I learned from Boumediene. I never used it before, but it definitely, there's like, I can't think of a simpler or easier way of saying it. And I think probably the ethics thing is like everyone has their own ethics, but really how are we building systems that are leaving stuff out, I think is the biggest question that we have. So you don't have to, this is literally from ChatGPT, because I don't know this stuff, but you know, what are like sort of the moral guidelines or principles in different like religious constructs these don't exist within AI systems. Obviously, ChatGPT shared it with me, but it isn't embedded into the logic and the choices that it makes as it comes up with outcomes. And so there is a philosophical incompleteness in the tools that we're building. So they can do what we need them to do, but can't really understand our own intentionality. And certainly they don't have their own intentionality as we understand them right now. There's also an erasure of language and culture, as everybody here knows, or anyone using these systems knows. They're all in English. They're built off of a particular worldview. It's capitalist, it's Western, it's largely male. And in the context of the world in which we live, where we're already losing indigenous culture, knowledge, religious nuance and belief and discreteness, this is going to pose a further challenge. However, there's amazing organizations like Abundant Intelligences, which works with indigenous knowledge. There's like lots of not-for-profits, research initiatives at universities that are now really focusing on how they can really lean into supporting the work of people trying to preserve what they're doing. And many of them are using AI to do it. So IBM, for example, has an amazing initiative to preserve Amazonian indigenous knowledges using AI. And there's lots of other stuff. So I feel like I should pause, or should I just keep going and we can? Okay. Okay. So, and then the next topic I wanted to address is sacred data. So this is again something that's like very easy to understand. Everybody here has something that's like sacred to you, right? It could be your health data, it could be your children's pictures, it could be a religious text, it could be an heirloom. These things are very precious to you, and AI doesn't care about that. Computers don't care about what's sacred to you. So when you think about ethics, they're not actually thinking about like what is something that's like sort of untouchable for each individual person. So this is like the definition of it, but I actually shared this, like, I think, there is an example which maybe it is like offends some people here, but if you were to ask an AI system to combine like 3 of the world's important religious texts and give you a better one, what would it do? And like, would it be better? How would you feel about it? Would you be like, great, I'm just going to follow these rules now because they must have optimized for everything? And so, that's something that we're not talking about enough in technology. What does it mean to optimize? And what is it that is absolutely unacceptable for you that an AI system is going to do? Forget whether it agrees with your beliefs or not, or it has racial bias towards your, your ethnicity or whatever. Like, what are the things that you actually feel like you just won't be okay with? And they're different for all of us. And then, sorry, coming back to indigenous AI, so this should have been earlier, but this is an artist called Rafik Anadol. We actually created this really cool artwork with this tribe in the Amazon called the Yawanawa, and he, I should probably have actually put up a quote, not by the artist, but by someone from the indigenous community. But the entire project is using AI to represent their languages. And so it's a visual representation of it. But, the reason I share this here is like that circular exchange is possible. It is possible to use the technologies that we have built today to understand the values and the principles of the communities that we're representing. It has happened. It's happening with indigenous AI. It's happening with, a lot of work that people in this room are doing around Islam, around faith, around belief. It's obviously not happening at a scale, and it's something that we have to keep coming back to as an ongoing and dynamic conversation as technologies evolve. So questions for people in the room. I was thinking like, what are the challenges? Are you building in distributed ways, which is how a lot of these faith-based or community-based paradigms exist as? What does it mean to build a decentralized system? What does it mean to have something that is evolving, that is not based on centralized knowledge or input or prompting? What's relationship versus individualistic? Embodied versus disembodied, particularly as we think more about physical AI and robots. The idea of abundance versus scarcity. These are all philosophical constructs, but actually they're really relevant to the belief systems that we're building into AI right now. So I don't know, like, how are we going to make it better? It's, it's going to be like a huge collective project that's going to involve pretty much everybody in the world who's engaging with these technologies, including users of them. And there's no real singular path of legislation. I actually really strongly believe, I've worked in AI pretty much my whole career, is like, regulation is not going to be the driver. Actually investing and making is going to be the driver. The research you guys do, the books you write, the conversations you have, that's actually going to, the making in technology is what sets a path, not the rule making. And I think here's some books that you might find useful. And what are your problems? You know, I think these are going to be different for everyone sitting in this room. If you're thinking about the bioethics of the brain, the ethics of brain data and neurotechnology, that's become a more public conversation in the last year. But like, I don't know what Islamic ethics around your dreams are. You know, I don't really know what the rules are. I know there's superstitions around sharing stuff, but what does it mean when you're starting to give stuff away? And what are your values and what should you be taking or giving? And these also evolve over time, right? Like a lot of like religious cultures were uncomfortable with organ implantations or transplantations, and that also evolves over time. So how are we thinking about technology as it affects our ethics and our communities today versus what does it mean in the future? These are conversations that are happening in the medical sector, but aren't really coming back and feeding back into AI systems. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, thank you so much, and thank you.
Okay. See. So are you there, Iftihar?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm welcome. Yeah. So I don't know how to share your voice. Is Yasin here?
Sorry, I can't hear you, so let me just fix my sound real quick. Okay, yeah, what was that? Assalamu alaikum.
Salam, yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm just trying to see how to project your voice to the
Oh,
room.
okay.
Yeah, so I don't know how to do it actually. So does anyone how to do it? How to project the voice in the speaker system of the room? Oh, just put the mic. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, can you talk and just see if how it works?
Yeah, is it working fine?
Yeah. Ah, okay. Yeah, okay. Can you talk?
Yeah, testing the audio from
Yeah,
from
go ahead.
Zoom.
I think everybody is hearing you in the room. Yeah.
Okay, okay, perfect. Are we good to go then?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so our next
Yeah.
speaker, sorry, I forgot to introduce her. So that's Iftihal Abu Saad from Toronto. I bet you've probably heard of her when she was working with Microsoft and then she left when she spoke about Palestine. Yeah, so we are happy to have her. Yeah, so you can start. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, thank you for having me at this conference. For obvious reasons, which is I'm not an academic, this will probably be the least academic presentation that you get to engage with today. But inshallah, there's some relevancy to different academic research and projects that are being conducted. But essentially, yeah, to just give a quick introduction. My name's Ibtihal. I used to be a software engineer at Microsoft AI for nearly 4 years, and then I was fired from the company for protesting their AI and cloud contracts with the Israeli military and government. And so I'm currently working on AI at Yaqin Institute for Islamic Research, where we are delving into some of these topics around how do we use AI ethically as an Islamic institution, as a Dawah institution. What are the guardrails that we put in place when the law, like the external bodies that we have in our countries of operation do not have regulations around certain use cases for AI and certain risks associated with AI. And so I think that the first thing that I wanted to start with is we hear about a lot of concerns with artificial intelligence and a lot of possible risks that have not been mitigated yet. Like there's a lot of sometimes it's fear mongering, sometimes it is rightful like issues that we hear about artificial intelligence. And one thing I have heard from some Muslim scholars, not necessarily in the AI field, is, well, why don't we just not engage with AI given all these risks and given all the potential for error and for contributing to something that is not right? Why don't we just disengage, given all that we know, and then in a few years, when the field is more developed, when the regulations are more developed, then we take a stab at using it for the Ummah, for Muslims. And an important point to I guess to emphasize around why we should be engaging in AI ethics as Muslims or as Islamic institutions is at this point just a historical precedent from the risks of delayed engagement with previous technologies. I think the most notable example is that of social media and how we did have some level of some level of disengagement, and some level of, we'll just let them figure it out and develop the applications, and then when they became more viral, more popular, then we started engaging more in the ethics of social media platforms, in the issues that come with social media platforms. And at that point, what we found out is, to a certain extent, it was too late on some of these issues like shadow banning, and how Muslim scholars, Muslim activists, Muslim da'wah pages tend to face a lot more or a lot less tend to have a lot less visibility on these platforms by virtue of how the algorithm is deprioritizing our content. We started to notice that youths, including the majority of Muslim youths, were being affected by these platforms, and were taking Islamic content from these platforms in ways that we didn't necessarily approve of as an ummah. And so this is just to set I guess a baseline, or like a rationale for why it is important for us to continue engaging in this research, continue engaging in trying to influence policy at this moment right now, when sure, like artificial intelligence and AI ethics specifically are still in initial research phases, and there's a lot that has not been studied, a lot that has not been even revealed in terms of risks and negative uses, but the consequences of delaying this engagement would possibly be more severe than our delayed engagement with previous technologies. And so we don't have the option to take a seat back. And I think this also goes to the concept that we have as Muslims of khilafah, and also the concept of doing good and coming in the way of evil. Because taking a backseat and just letting big tech companies decide with their responsible AI departments what is right, what is wrong, does not necessarily align. And maybe I'm preaching to the choir. I'm not sure about the audiences. I'm not in person as much, but just that do not align with our principles of using beneficial knowledge, using in order to influence society and to try to prevent the harms that we are seeing from the uses of AI. And so on that note, what I guess I'm more experienced with and wanted to delve into is just how do we as tech workers or future tech workers for students, how should we make decisions during our careers on how to go into AI, where to work on AI, when to walk out of AI spaces. And I think, speaking from my personal experience here, I think a big issue that is in the industry in terms of big tech and just the companies that monopolize the AI tools that we're using at the moment, is that there are really good PR efforts and sanitization efforts going on that do not let us necessarily see beforehand what are the places where AI is being used in ways that are that do not align with Islamic values. So like the biggest example of that is a lot of these companies will have responsible AI departments and will have entire like responsible AI conferences and just engage in efforts to sort of whitewash their engagement and with AI and just present this image where AI ethics are actually at the forefront of our research, and AI ethics are like where all budget goes. But then when you delve deeper, after going into these spaces, you realize that a lot of these responsible AI departments are still aligned with the imperialist, capitalistic framework within which these companies operate, which is ethics when they serve profit. Like let's look at AI ethics when we're talking about avatars that can attend meetings on your behalf and that an enterprise will purchase for the sake of productivity, but not necessarily looking at the ethics of AI when it can lead us to canceling contracts. It can lead us to not doing business with certain governments or with certain entities. And so that's one big factor right now in terms of choosing where to go as an AI developer or as an AI researcher is trying to go past these facades of AI ethics and responsible AI that are presented by these companies. And I think that's the difference for us as Muslims is we are not only looking at this topic from a profit perspective or a startup potential perspective, but because we do know that we have an amana, and again, we have that concept of khilafah, where we cannot just stand by and let the technology be. I think misused is not the right word because a lot of the times these are intentional, known, researched uses, such as the use in the genocide in Gaza by Israel. Like they're not instances of the technology getting unintentionally used for evil. But long story short, I think that is a big difference is that we feel the onus on us even when money is not in the picture. And so if you are like a student or someone in the industry looking to build AI tools, looking to go into the field on a professional, not academic level, I think the biggest warning is the need for us to dig deeper and delve past these PR efforts that these companies have. And I think a second thing, which is possibly less related when we're considering where to go within this field, is I think we have to break, and this is more of a mindset shift type of aspect, but in the social media field that I was discussing earlier, and now even in AI, I think even as Muslims and as Muslim organizations, we've sort of accepted the fact that these large companies are going to have a hold on the market, are going to have a hold on the latest developments in AI, whether it be Microsoft, OpenAI, Palantir, like just that these big names are where all the action happens, are where all the cool innovation happens. And that is something that our youth, even from a young age, like you're taught, if you're going into computer science in high school, you know, the goal is you go to a really good university, you continue computer science, and then you go into these funnels, like you just go into one of these big tech companies and they boost your resume and you make, you know, a couple $100,000 there and or pounds in this case. And we and a big issue right now for us when I talk to Muslims who are in the field is, oh, I mean, I have to join these companies. I'll just try to make a change from the inside. You know, I'll just attempt to make them less evil, but I don't have an alternative to not be at again, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, you name it. But we need the mindset shift that alternative systems are possible when we pool enough resources into them, and when we have our Muslim researchers, our Muslim lawyers, our Muslim developers all contributing to new endeavors. We can break out of the shackles at this point of big tech and develop alternative ecosystems and alternative AI models where we're not similarly with how we're dealing with social media now, which is, hey, does anyone know someone at Meta Muslims who can unblock my account? Hey, do you know hacks to get your posts to get more visibility, and trying to work around a system that is inherently faulty, that is inherently not aligned with our values and our ethics. We are again in early stages where we cannot just try to shape policy and try to shape ethics, but where we also have the chance to break from these companies and build from the ground up. And as students especially, you will, especially right now after at a huge cost, the genocide in Gaza has exposed how complicit big tech is and big AI companies are in murdering and targeting and surveillance that is being exported to our countries in the West as well. And so after these revealing 2 years, it is now, again, at a huge cost. It is easier to find like-minded people who are also not disillusioned about the state of ethics in these spaces and who are trying to come up with alternatives where we can still use AI and its huge potential for the service of the Ummah, but without enabling and contributing to these harmful technologies. And so there is a lot of room for finding people that you can build projects with, even at these conference, like just the networking potential of just breaking from this mold of we will all just go into Google and just do our thing there. And I think from my experience as someone who tried for a couple of years to use the preferred methods of the company to call out its unethical uses of AI, is a lot of the times in these companies, profit will continue to be prioritized, even if you have Muslim voices that are advocating against it, or non-Muslim ally voices that are speaking in favor of Palestinian interests, of honestly the world's interests. It takes a lot of financial pressure and a lot of legal pressure for these companies to fold. And so instead of having this mindset of, oh yeah, we're all going to graduate and go into these spaces with a minimal ROI potentially on how much change you can affect, even though it is, especially for Muslims, like culturally, we have this whole culture of prestige around going into these spaces. So even though you are letting go of this material and dunya benefit of going into these spaces, there is a huge need for us to break out of that. And yeah, I didn't want to talk about things that people are not interested in. So these are, I think, my broader messages for the audience, but I would love to take questions and address any relevant topics that are top of mind. But if you take anything out of this talk, it's like the urgency of engaging right now when the time is still early, and then B, also the urgency of breaking out of mainstream traditional AI spaces that have been using the field for evil at the moment.
Yeah, all right. Jazakallah khair. Any questions, or I mean, she's asking for questions. Do you have questions to ask her? Yeah, maybe you can come here because I don't know how to. Just come here and then you can ask her that from there. Yeah, so the microphone does the project here.
What would you recommend to Muslims that are wanting to work as engineers in best roles and projects while navigating, obviously, that these companies are competitive, considering it's very hard to just like create a startup that rivals like DeepMind or they're creating like VR. 5.1s or something like that. Not like-
So I didn't hear you actually. So the question was, what are the alternatives?
If you recommend, because you're working the time to get applications off work, when this kind of work is only really available in these companies, and then obviously like creating your own startup or something is pretty difficult. To sort of compare with that kind of work and experience you'll get.
Yeah, so I mean, so he was saying, I think he was expanding on your comment about what should Muslim students do if this kind of work is done only in big tech companies, and then outside of these big tech companies, you cannot really do that job. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear the intervention. So what was the question at the
Yeah, the question is, what should students do
Okay.
if the only line of work is done in these big tech companies, that outside of them is, I mean, you don't have that much expertise. I mean, being addressing these big tech companies. Yeah. So what's the advice? Because maybe like yeah, so that level of specialization, you don't find it only don't find it outside this kind of companies. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing is I would push back against the fact that it's only done like that, like I guess the latest AI innovation is only done in big tech companies. I think they're the ones with, again, by virtue of PR and marketing departments that are very developed at this point, they're the ones that get the most screen time, news time. But there are alternative, like even not to just plug Yakin Institute, but we have, for example, like a smaller team of people that are focused on how do we use AI at Yakin for da'wah, as an example. And sure, it's not necessarily like building a model from the ground up the way you would at Google, but it's still a way to bring your knowledge in AI and your knowledge in the tech field overall to something that serves the Ummah rather than kills members of the Ummah bluntly. And so I think A is just these big tech companies are not the only place where innovation happens. And even in terms of developing LLMs, there are like smaller, like say university departments or startups where other researchers are also not trying to stay within the mold of big tech. So I think point one is I'd just like to clarify that even though they're not on your phone as much for like AI breakthrough like developments, there are spaces where the technology is being developed with more ethical purposes. And then point two is in the cases of people that find themselves already at these companies with that like at a space for AI that they then find out is not following the ethics that they have put in place for themselves. I think it's important to not take a backseat of yeah, but my job, yes, but you know, all these companies, something I hear a lot is all these companies are evil, like there's nowhere that the tech is used for good. And that's an argument we hear again even about social media, but in truth we have platforms like Upschool, like Blue Sky, where the tech is not used for controlling the Palestinian narrative, for example. So I think we have this perception that if I speak up and I lose this job, it's done. Like I cannot work with an AI anymore. But again, because of point one, the other alternatives, alternative even like workspaces exist, and because of just our duty, despite the cost, to speak up against these unethical uses, I think we can't afford to just close our eyes and say, I'm not the one that signs the contract, hence I'm innocent, because our labor and our research and our like collective intelligence is what powers these companies at the end of the day.
Is that here another question? Yeah, I think it may be better if you just come ask here. Is on the microphone. Or maybe I should bring the laptop. I don't know if that. Oh no, I shouldn't. I cannot. Oops, shouldn't do that. Oh, he's back. Good. Yeah. So yeah, just come here, ask.
You know, almost a bit of a counterpoint, but also I think a niche question is, I think all of the large companies have been outcompeted in niche areas. And I think, what are your insights on thinking there are certain small avenues in which very small groups of people, individuals or small teams, will be able to make massive changes? Like, because I think it has been done many times by small teams. And I think, where do you think we should focus? Because knowing that we don't currently have any aligned large organizations ourselves.
Other questions or comments? I think you should come here. If you want to ask her questions, it's better to come here. They have no way of protecting.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair. Ibtihal for this talk, very inspiring. I have a question on, I think it aligns a bit with the question from the previous brother on like for example, I'm curious, what are you currently working on? And like, where do you see the gaps, and where do you, in terms of like what we can do like at a small scale, individual or small teams, what do you think can be done like before making grand plans, like just incrementally today, if you wanted to start doing something, what would you advise us to work on, and how does it relate to what you're currently working on? What are your projects right now?
So was the question clear or not?
Yes, yeah, I can answer. I think I can answer both of them together since they're related. So yeah, I think one big thing that like one big flaw of a lot of these big tech companies and that we should not fall into is the development and the yes, let's innovate, build this, push it through the door, have it be used, comes before the ethical study and the regulations being put in place. And so I think even though we're like, okay, as Muslims, like we wouldn't intentionally build something to be used for evil, right? But even in that case, like you have to do, I think to answer the question on like what we should do first, I think conversations like all that's going on today and academic work like the one being done by many people in the event should be our first step. Like we should not replicate what led to a lot of the ethical issues in big tech, which is develop, and then worry about the negative uses and the negative consequences of the technology. And so I think number one is yeah, just developing the ethical frameworks for developing and using AI in the first place. And I think like to a lot of people, like what comes to mind is like, okay, but I'm like technical, like I'm a developer, or I'm like a ML scientist, like that's not my field of expertise, is not the regulations or the law. But that is another issue, is that in like a lot of even these big tech companies or a lot of states currently, the decisions of what AI uses are allowed, and the whole like regulations around AI come from people who do not have a technical background and who do not necessarily understand even how the models are trained. And when you have that background, when you actually understand how to develop these systems, how to train these models, that's when it's really important to have your expertise and your research and your contributions to this, I guess, less code heavy space, because you can anticipate the ways in which biases can impact the model. You can anticipate ways in which hallucinations can happen, and if there are even any guardrails to prevent them. Like questions like these cannot be answered by someone who just has a pure legal background and has not interacted with the technology and has not tried to build it. So in my opinion, again, to not fall into the same mistakes, I think we have to focus a lot on just building these like red lines and building these guidelines before we're like, okay, we have like 5 models now that are alternatives to these ChatGPT use cases, for example. I think it's important to bring a technical background into the regulatory field. But secondly, I know like sometimes so once that's done, or maybe in parallel, but without necessarily focusing on the production and the like, what's the word? Like put in the product, the deployments, like in parallel while working on building the technology, I think a lot of concern is, yes, but the cost of building an AI is really high because you need GPUs, you need teams of AI researchers, you need teams of developers. Like you can't just, the way that anyone can like build a website, not anyone can train like a large language models. And so I think a second, I guess, aspect that I think we should pay attention to as Muslims is for a lot of these big tech companies, like these costs, whether it be financial or environmental, of training large language models are not necessarily taken into account. Like these are companies worth trillions of dollars. These are companies that have had large data centers that are impacting the environment negatively for years. And so when they're trying to come up with new AI solutions, what they don't have in mind, okay, how do we optimize and have fewer costs in terms of like, this is from someone who was at Microsoft AI, and it would be like, oh, we need a new feature, okay, 5 GPUs. Like it's not, there was no not as much account for the cost aspect. And so I think for Muslim institutions, for Muslim researchers, both because of our I guess, smaller funding pool compared to $1 trillion company, and both because of our duty towards, using our money responsibly, treating the environment responsibly. I think another like area that needs a lot of focus on is how do we optimize for the cost? Like how do we have maybe smaller language models that fulfill some purposes just as well as the ones trained by big tech companies, and not necessarily trying to use them as the blueprint, and trying to optimize for ways that take into account our priorities. I think that would be P2 after like the P1 of developing the regulations, in my personal opinion and experience. And then thirdly, possibly not in order, but overall, and this is less for the like Muslim developers, Muslim researchers, and more for our institutions and our masajid, our our big bodies in the West especially, is developing the financial structure to support these kinds of projects. Because I think a big issue is a lot of like Muslims have wealth in some parts of the world, and Muslims donate, but a lot of the financial aspect goes into purely just like relief. Like for example, AI is helping the American government with tracking say like protesters for Palestine and then arresting them without charges, right? And then you'll have Muslims pooling thousands to help with the legal fees of these prisoners, which is a good thing. But we don't have Muslim institutions and Muslim individuals who are like, okay, how do I use the financial aspects to target these issues at the root, which is why do we have technology that is allowing for this tracking and this kidnapping of protesters. I'm given like a very specific example and simplifying it, but I think our institutions also need to try to target the root of a lot of our issues, which is that we don't have the funding to build alternative ecosystems and try to bridge that gap as well.
All right, okay, Jazakallah khair. So any last question? Maghrib came in, so really, yeah, can I just come here? Sorry? Yeah, he's asking you which LLM are you using?
Sorry?
Someone is asking you which LLM are you using?
I honestly, right now I'm trying to limit as much as possible, but DeepSeek I've found to be okay, and compared to, as far as I know, compared to like other LLMs, it does not fall into as many of the ethical issues. But I've found it to be comparatively okay given the but again, I'm not a specialist, so someone can counter my point, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, all right. So did you want to respond or? I know it's Maghrib already, so I think should we did you want to say something? Yeah, I think you have to come here because I cannot hear you well. So just come and talk to her directly. Yeah, okay. So last comment.
Which cloud platforms would you recommend to use as an alternative?
Ah, yeah, okay. He's saying which cloud platforms would you recommend as an alternative?
Yeah, we have non-big tech ones that are good. There's DigitalOcean. Replit is built by like a Palestinian, or is founded by like a Palestinian very vocal like CEO. I think Replit, Cloudflare, and DigitalOcean are like the biggest alternatives right now to AWS and Azure, Google Cloud.
All right. Other last comments? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Maghrib just came in here, so I think we have to go to pray. And Jazakallah khair, thank you again for coming, and Barakallahu Fik. Take care.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
So